rise for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. What's that? Oh, okay.
We'll get
Rich's class. Up here. You give it to Julie, she'll give you a glass of water. I don't know. Water? Yeah. Welcome, everyone. We start with the recognizing the Employee of the Month in the Village of Southampton. So, this month is Richard Chamberlain. He's a groundskeeper 1 in the Parks Department, and we hired him in December of 2014. And he was nominated by his supervisor, Larry Wojcik, and lately I've given Rich a lot of responsibility to perform duties while running a small crew. Parks cleanup, firehouses, cutting shrubs, hedges, weeding, et cetera, and he's done very well, shows interest in making everything look great and helping the entire department function better. He's come a long way and is an asset to all of us. So I want to congratulate Richard and thank him for all his efforts in the Village of Southampton. So thanks. We have a board presentation, a public comment actually first. So we do have, I know a couple of people have written in here for the public hearing. So if you want to wait until the public hearing to speak, that's fine. Just tell me that if I call your name out. So, and the public hearing is on the North Sea Road corridor. So, Joe McLaughlin.
My name is Joseph McLaughlin, and I live at 436 Hill Street. If I may just give these out.
Joe, take them. Ongoing, it's awful.
What you have in front of you is a dumpster which is up at the Southampton Railroad Station. As you notice, it's overfilling. It overfills on a consistent basis, and animals oftentimes get into it and spread the garbage all over the area. Every time I go down, I have to pick up whatever happens to be around because I own the building next door. The Southampton Railroad Station is listed in the New York State Historical Register, along with 280 Elm Street, the building which I own, the large red brick building. And last year, I came to the village, and the mayor's secretary was very concerned about what I had said to her, and she had contacted the railroad, and they said there's a possibility that they would move that container over to Hampton Bays. That container is the container used by the maintenance people for all the railroad stations on the South Fork, from Montauk to Hampton Bays. I'm not too sure about West Hampton Beach. So, the other thing I wanted to say that the garbage that you presently see there is 18 feet from Elm Street. And as you know, I'm not too sure the attorney can vouch for what I'm saying, but the village has supervision within 50 feet. So the garbage end, which is there, is within 50 feet of the Elm Street. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to?
No, but the only thing I would really like to say is that we did pass a law that these dumpsters should be closed.
Right.
And this obviously is a dumpster that doesn't have a top on it. So it would seem to me, I think this is a lot of household garbage. I think people go down there and dump their household garbage in there.
What you're saying is true. The people do. I have stopped several people. Some of them were recognizable village residents coming and dumping off their garbage. However, regardless of who is dumping it off, who is responsible for the unit itself and maintaining the unit?
Well, I would think it's the railroad, is it not?
Yeah.
The railroad puts it there.
I understand. However, the railroad also has to follow state rules. Now, the Board of Health would not approve of this type of situation.
I'm with you on this. Don't think I'm arguing against you. I'm with
Okay.
you on this. And what I'm trying to say is if we send them a letter and say that they are
Send
to
letters.
have a covered dumpster, it would behoove them to lock it because they'll have less garbage that they have to pay for and dispose of.
Okay?
So that's
well,
going to be a suggestion that I think we should do.
We've sent letters.
Okay.
Okay.
Multiple.
I would like to give you a little bit of history. The dumpster originally had been on the north side of the tracks. When they built the elevated station, they moved that dumpster to the south side of the tracks. However, it was filling up with garbage, and they weren't too happy, I should think, having the garbage flowing over onto the platform where the people walk. So they moved it to the site where it presently is. My recommendation would be for the village to request that they move that back to the north side where it had originally been placed.
You mean on the other side of the tracks?
That's correct.
Well, how do they use it over there? Can they still use it over there? If they can't
Yes,
get to
well,
it?
the railroad has put several structures over there, but there's plenty of room over there for the dumpster. Granted, they would just have to drive their truck around the other side, up the cobblestone road, and dump it off. So I hope, with the influence of the
We'll,
village, that something can be.
can you, of course, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Would anyone else like to ask a question pertaining to that? Okay,
No,
thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks,
you.
Joe. Judy? Okay. John? Bennett?
Lord John, I go to a planning board meeting in
Okay.
town.
All right. Fran? Okay.
Hand these up to each of the, and one to the attorney. Do you need one, Steve?
Yeah, make a couple copies. Okay, Fran?
Good evening. My name is Fran Adam Chesky. I live at 40 West Prospect Street in Southampton. I'm here for the public, for the alphabetical roads. Last time Jim Williams got here and he got shot down. I'm here to give you the deed, as it said, and it's on the second page, there's a star right next to what I'm going to read. This conveyance is expressly subject to the following conditions subsequent. The guarantee receives and shall hold the title hereby vested solely for the purpose of laying out the parcels in questions as and for public roads over which the public may travel to and from the beach. In the event that the guaranteed have laying out such roads shall abandon same or convert them to any other use, title shall therefore revert to and shall again automatically vested into the grantors or their successors in interest. I know you laid out the roads. You put the markers on how big the roads are and stuff like that. I saw your comments to Jim on the last meeting saying you're just going to put a footpath, but these are roads for the public.
That's what that is.
Right. It's
Not
not
gonna pave
just
it.
for the
Not gonna
village
pave 'em.
residents, it's for the town residents, for the
Not paving
public.
them, and I'm not putting parking lots there.
They're roads.
Not paving them, and I'm not putting
We
parking
don't,
lots.
I don't care about paving roads. They're roads for us to travel to
You can
and from the
travel to and
beach.
from the beach.
Right.
Over those areas right there.
Now, on Dune Road, there's no parking on both sides of the road, correct?
There's parking in certain parts along Meadow Lane, yeah.
I've never seen anything, everything is marked no parking. Now, if you put footpaths, how are the public gonna use these footwalks to get across the beach?
Ride their bike, they can walk there, they can get dropped off. I'm not going to pave all the roads there.
Well, I'm not asking you to pave
Well,
the
that's what
roads.
you guys are doing. You're asking for us to
I'm not asking-
pave
I'm
these
just
roads
asking you to open
and do
up the
all
roads.
parking and stuff. That's what you guys are doing. That's what you're doing.
Road
Yeah.
C is already widened from the people that live next to it, made their own road up to the dunes. And if you go to Road C and you go all the way up to the dunes, that person has a gate right alongside of that road to use that
In the village.
public road, yes.
The village took all it, what do you mean?
Now, there's gravel at the bottom of that road already, so you really don't have to do anything. So, I mean, why can't a few cars park there to eliminate some of the congestions that we're having at the beach?
Why can't the town step up and open up additional spaces?
These roads were granted to you,
And
and that's what I'm asking you to open these roads up.
And they're opened. They're open.
Oh,
And
they
people
cleared
can walk
their-
back, go back and forth.
I'm just saying the roads,
Oh.
it says public roads. They're not roads. Some of them you can't even get through.
Oh, you can get through them. I walked through every one of them this weekend, from the road to the beach.
So what kind of footpaths are you going to put there? Are you going to put wooden walkways, or are you going to put, what kind of footpaths are you going to put through there?
The footpaths are there.
So you're saying that you're not going to do anything?
We've got it marked. There's places people can go back and forth. The town wants to sit down and have a whole conversation about beach driving and parking and where can we increase. I'm all for that. Okay, I've been talking to those guys for over a year now, and I've got nothing but lip service.
I'm not talking about the beach access.
This is part of it, because every time anybody goes to talk
These
to them, they
roads are
start throwing
deeded over
these.
to the village. This has nothing to do with the town right now.
It has everything to do with the town.
These roads are deeded over to the village,
You're right.
correct?
And you have access
to
across those
maintain-
road to the beach.
For you to maintain the roads.
And they're maintained, you can walk across those.
Can you drive through it with a four-wheel drive?
No, and we're not
Drive
going
on the A and C, you can drive up to the top of the dunes, and that's it.
we're not going to breach the dunes. We're not going to breach the dune system here, okay, and in multiple spots along there.
I'm not asking to breach the dunes. I'm just asking for access to park on the side. If we got four-wheel drive, are we allowed to park there? Or am I going to get a ticket if I park at Road C on that road and walk across the dune?
Is it marked no parking? I don't know. I have to go back to the village attorney to talk about that stuff.
All right?
Okay,
That's what I'm here for.
okay.
All right.
All right, Franny.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I know you're here for the public hearing. Anything else? Were you here for the public hearing? Oh, okay. We're still in the public comment section. Okay. Mr. Grieven, did you want to talk about in the public hearing?
I think I'll hold my fire.
Okay. Anyone else who didn't sign up who would like to make public comment during the public comment section?
I'll make a comment.
Okay, so come on up.
Good evening, my name is Phil Gay, and I'm not going to touch the road issue.
Okay,
I'm going to go somewhere else.
okay.
As the board knows, I own East End Clam Bakes, and a couple issues happened at the beach. We got a call from God, I'm going to forget her name. She's going to shoot me. Anyway, from the office here that there was garbage left after a party, and the people we were doing the party for were going to get a fine. And as it turned out, there were two parties there. There was only supposed to be one. I don't know if you heard about this or not.
No.
But the people that set up had unmarked trucks. They were carrying stuff over the dune. The two staff that worked for me were at a different part of Old Town. They were down a little bit to the west side of Old Town, and this party set up directly underneath there, and they left, garbage, firewood, normal stuff. We cleared it up, and as it turned out, there was somebody else down there that didn't have a permit for a party. There was another issue that happened on a Saturday night at Halsey Neck Lane, where I happened to be running the party there, and a truck was going back and forth with no village permit on the truck, and these people were not, they were working as caterers, but they weren't obviously caterers. I could tell that by looking at them. And I spoke to the office again about that, and they said, well, there was a permitted party there, but there was no caterer involved. And I said, well, there was. So as it turns out, this caterer that was working there was not really a caterer. He was the make-believe caterer. But before the season starts, we have to write from our insurance company has to write the Village of Southampton as an additional insured, and to protect the village, of course. Somebody gets hurt, whatever. You got people down there that are acting as a caterer but not having that. I think the village needs to somehow, with one of your code enforcing guys or whatever, come and check and see. They used to come down when Don Perember was around and check. He liked getting a lobster and a piece of chicken and an ear of corn, but bottom line was he used to come and check on everything.
Yeah. And
I think that that kind of thing should happen again.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's having a party down there without a permit, they ought to be either fined or tell them they have to leave the beach.
I think what we need to do is take you and a couple of other caterers who do these parties frequently, sit down with Mimi, evaluate our system to look at and potentially make some changes. And I mean, it's a good time to go into the fall like that and do that. So we'll have Steve and Mimi we'll coordinate a meeting.
Yeah.
And because it's, it's Department of Health issues. They have to have Suffolk County food management certificates.
Correct.
There's a lot of stuff that you guys are required to do that if somebody's not doing the right thing, they're not doing that. So they undercut operations, and who knows what the quality of the food and the safety issues and the way it was prepared. So, all right, good.
All right.
Thanks, Phil.
That's all. Thanks.
Yeah.
One thing, I think it was Eileen that I think had,
It was Eileen.
right.
Just shoot me because I can't.
But I think we all should thank Philip and East End Clam Bakes for cleaning up the messes that were left by somebody else.
He does a great job.
Yep.
He does a great job in this community. Yeah, come on.
Hi, my name's Eben Gay, 54 Bayview Road in Noyak. I just want to touch, I'm going to touch on the road thing. I think Franny, was shooting for what I want to shoot for is if there's accesses and the town is negating to maintain them and they've turned them over to you to maintain, are they to be all like the accesses you've given us, dune access to the beach? In other words, vehicle accessible, or is it supposed to be footpath accessible? Does anybody define those as, four-wheel drive access points?
Well, in
Or
1956,
we don't know that?
they weren't selling four-wheel drives on the
Excuse
market.
me?
In 1956, when this was deeded to the village, okay, the whole purpose behind those letter roads is that you always have access to the beach.
To the beach, and
Now,
it
that
didn't
access
spell
could
it out.
be oxen and cart, it could be
Right.
a horse, it could be a foot, it could
Right.
be bicycle, it could be whatever.
Well, they had Jeeps back then, so
Yeah, but
I'm
they weren't,
assuming
they
they
really
weren't-
weren't being used the
Yeah.
way they're used today.
I mean, is that something that you guys are going to try to work out with them?
Oh,
Somebody would go
We're going
do
to
the
ensure that
work.
those roads are open, that people are always going to be able to traverse across them and stuff.
To be honest with you, the only one that's identifiable to me when I've driven down there after this was brought up from Franny, I had to go looking for it, and my brother was like, I think the only one that you actually can see that looks like it resembles that, what we're discussing, a footpath, is where there's a boat ramp right across the street. It looks like there's a trail, a walking trail,
No,
next to an estate, and it's not really marked clearly, and I wouldn't have known that that's what it was for until somebody said there's more accesses than we have, available. I think,
Well, they're already marked. All the roads are marked there. The width of the road is all marked. We had a surveyor went up and marked it all. This weekend, I went
Did
and
they
walked each one of them.
sign them, put a sign on them?
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
Oh, really?
there's
Okay.
there's stakes there that tell you
Yeah.
exactly which letter road it is.
you can go out
You
there
can
and you
walk,
can see
yeah.
them.
You
All
can
right.
walk, you
And
can
you can
walk
see
from
the
Meadow
ways.
The one
Lane.
across from the boat ramp, I wrote, to Hetty Creek, I saw that one.
No, you could, every single one of them are all marked. You can walk from Meadow Lane to the Ocean Beach on each one of them.
I just think if they did eventually, guys, work it out, that it spreads the wealth, so to speak, or the distress, these people that own those houses, if you could just get us spread out, whatever areas, to alleviate the frontage area that those people are taking, maybe they'll go, okay, it's cool, you worked it out.
The town's not talking, the town's not having any conversations about opening additional beach space, parking. They're not
think Philip talked to
they're
them.
not having any conversations over increased opening beach driving opportunities, and they're dumping every single thing on the village
your
of
lap.
Southampton to be the end-all for all beach parking and all beach driving. It's not fair.
Yeah, it isn't
It's not fair to our residents, it's not fair to our crews that have to clean up down there.
How do you get them to come in here then? You're the mayor, how do you reel them in? They need to be reeled in, I guess, right?
Yeah, you know what it is? There's a lot of pressure from residents in the town that don't want the town to open up additional spot because it impacts where they live at. And that's the whole thing. So
Well,
you have to
there's
have
like
political will in town hall.
There's a spot that's, was talked about out of the west end of Flying Point, Maine Beach. If they could open up that, there's no houses there. Channel Pond, there's a group of little ponds there. There's an area there that goes to Fowler's where there are no homes.
I'm in complete agreement with you.
And if they could just give you a half a mile here, a mile there, it'll you know,
I completely agree with everything that you're saying.
and then maybe everybody could get back to normal here instead of like, you know, having a problem going to the beach. I mean, it really...
I can't even go to the beach anymore. So that's what happened for me.
We still like you down here.
I know.
You're not like, it's not that
Some of you
we're
did.
not looking for the mayor like that.
Oh, yeah? And the people that egged my house were looking
Listen,
for
I
the mayor like that, okay?
I saw you sitting by the side of the road that day. I stopped.
Yeah, this side of the
gotta
road.
talk.
This side of the road. What side of the dune was I on? I was on the street side of the dune. Yeah, so, yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring it up. I just
Yeah,
wanted
all
to
right.
see what the deal is, that's all.
Okay.
All right, okay.
Thanks. So many goods. Yeah, so. Anyone else have any comments for the public section? Yes.
My name is Martha McClanahan. In light of the discussion about the dumpster at the railroad station, it would seem to me that that is an issue for the ordinance inspector, and I believe you all have read my letter about the ordinance inspector, who seems to drive around the village and not see any breaking of the ordinances that you all have carefully initiated. Outside deer fencing. The classic example, of course, is the sidewalk being torn up on Gin Lane. I find it rather extraordinary that anyone could drive by that and not question, since I think everyone knows that sidewalks are public property. And I see the ordinance inspector driving all over the village, and I find it interesting. I see violations, and he does not. And sometime I'd like to know what his responsibilities are, and then how they're enforced. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Okay. All right, so we're going to do the board presentation here. Pierce Concha, 51 Pond Lane. Actually, beforehand, I think it's important that we recognize Fred Thiel.
I was going to do that.
Okay.
You can do that.
No,
No, go ahead. No, do your thing.
Steal your thunder.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
And Bridget Fleming for your support throughout this entire process and the roles that you guys have played for us. So I'm very thankful for that. I'm sure Brenda's got a lot more too. So
No, that was all I was going to acknowledge him. Good evening, Mayor Eppley and the Board of Trustees. This feels really weird standing here, but it's all good. We have a dream team tonight that's going to present tonight, and I'm going to take the first leg. And I would just like to share my connection to Pierce Concert. Born and raised in the beautiful village of Southampton in the mid-50s, and I'm telling my age, when things were much different than it is today. We played hopscotch and double dutch in the street, hide and go seek, tag, blowing up inner tubes, and going to Cold Spring in the summer, and building snow forts with the Miller boys across the street to protect ourselves, doing fun and not so fun ice ball fights, and pulling the riding sleighs when the road got nice and hard and icy. I remember collecting bottles and taking them to Arts Market on Hampton Road to cash them in for those delicious heroes, candies, and ice cream sandwiches. I attended Southampton Public School, where there still was a sense of segregation, but for the most part, we all got along. Even we had a sit-out demanding a Black Studies class we implemented into a curriculum along with the hiring of a Black Studies teacher. School officials were a bit shocked to see blacks and whites sitting out together, but we won the fight. The educational system seemed efficient, but the teacher hired was not local, and I remember us teaching him about our community, but our local history curriculum never included our local hero, Pierce Concert. As an adult, I discovered the story of Pierce Concert, seeing the monument by Agawam Lake while taking my kids to the park. I was very active in my community, and during the organizing of the centennial celebration in 1994, myself, along with a group of people in my community, strongly suggested that Blacks contributed a lot to this village and thought it would be a great idea to include Pierce Concert in the centennial booklet. Believe it or not, I have a copy of it here, and I'm just going to read something because I think it's very important to hear some of the history of this incredible man and how he is connected to this village. This is Amazing Voyage. A stately white, framed white atop a grassy slope on the west side of the Watermill Lane was the home more than a century ago of the whaling Captain MacArthur Cooper, whose extraordinary voyage to Japan 8 years before Commander Matthew Perry reached there has earned him an honored place in the history books of at least 2 countries. Although the year the house was built and an architect was unknown, the village had ensured its preservation because it was owned by Captain Cooper. The house was described by the Society for the Preservation of Long Island Antiques as truly America's claim to fame. The story of Captain Cooper's remarkable adventures was told at length by Charles A. Jagger of Southampton in the first issue of the Southampton magazine, which he published and edited in the spring of 1912. It was a lead story entitled Entering a Forbidden Court. By Mr. Jagger wrote that he had based the article on these sources. An account printed in an Hawaiian newspaper and written by Dr. Winslow, a missionary who interviewed Captain Cooper in Hawaii in a few weeks after he had led Japan in 1845. The captain's own logbook and the recollection of the traditions of families and friends of men who had sailed with Captain Cooper on his remarkable voyage. According to Mr. Jagger, Captain Cooper, his crew, and the ship Manhattan left Sag Harbor on November 9th, 1843, for the northwest coast of America to hunt for whales. They sailed around Cape Horn and headed out onto the Pacific, and their ultimate destination, Amsterdam, Holland, where they would sell the whalebone and whale oil. The Manhattan cruise for whale, with the success that was usually in those days before the extermination of whales, was nearly complete as it was at present, Mr. Jagger wrote. By the early 1845, the ship, in need of a fresh supply of water and wood, headed for some small island in the neighborhood of Japan and the Philippines, and on February 12th, came to anchor in Port Lord in Pearl or Monon Island and took on stores, including vegetables. The ship was also overloaded, according to the log. After a month in port, the ship got underway again, and on this early morning on March 15th, reached the island of St. Peter, a few hundred miles northeast of Japan. They dropped anchor with the hope the crew would be able to pick up some large sea turtles for the variety of their regular diet of salt meat. I thought that was very interesting. The island was thought to be uninhabited by Captain Cooper and his nephew, Franklin Jessup. Came upon 11 Japanese sailors who they learned had been shipwrecked there for a fierce storm several months before. They had been able to subsist on the supply of rice, and they were depending on water and what they could find in the crevices of the rocks. Determined to return the men to their homeland, Captain Cooper set sail for Kyoto, now considered Tokyo, Japan, despite the threat of death that hung over any foreigner who entered into Japanese domain. The last attempt by American vessel to visit Japan was 8 years before, when the brig Morrison entered Kyoto Bay with shipwrecked sailors, and they were driven out with cannon shots, wrote Mr. Jagger, noting that Captain Cooper rejected the alternative of sailing into the port of Nakasi, I might not pronounce it, Mayor, you might know some of these names, which was open to the vessel from Dutch and Chinese ports, but which was hundreds of miles out of the course. On the way to Kyoto, Mr. Jagger continued the Manhattan, spotted a Japanese junk with the stern stove, and in a sinking condition. She was bound for Yoto with a cargo of pickled salmon, but drifting helplessly about at the mercy of wind and wave. The Japanese craft was about the same size and was wrecked on St. Peter's Island and also carried a crew of 11. They too were taken aboard the Manhattan. Their sinking ship was afire and left adrift. For several weeks after the second rescue, the Manhattan encountered high winds and heavy seas and numbers of mishaps, which named Yoto Bay, and was in sight of land at the end of March. When numbers of Japanese craft approached, the captain put 4 of the refugees aboard one of the craft, which directions to notify the powerful shogun of Yoto of mention in the enter Yoto Bay. Once again, violent winds was in the interfere that this gale winds and strong currents drove the Manhattan more than 100 miles away from Yoto. Finally, on April 16th, she was able to return north and anchor on the east side of the bay. Events following swiftly, according to Mr. Jagger, Captain Cooper learned that the shogun was given his permission for the ship to proceed to Yoto, but there was no wind to fill the sails. But Jagger wrote with the following: hundreds of Japanese boats with about 15 men in each boat formed a long line, formed abreast, and towed the ship into the harbor at a remarkable speed. These boats were not propelled by rowing or paddling, but were sculled along with a single oar, but of the stern, and manipulated by several men of each oar. The ship was taken up into a bay just below Yoto and moored behind a point of land where the foreigners could not see the city. Then the ship's log says they formed their boats around the ship with a guard of about 3,000 men. They took all arms out and kept till we left. There were several of the Nomalis came and board to see the ship. They appeared friendly. Mr. Jagger writes that Captain Cooper was informed through an interpreter that there he nor any of the men could leave the ship for any reason. What would happen if anyone did was eloquently indicated by drawing a naked sword across the throat. For 4 days, the Manhattan lay an anchor in Yoto Harbor. It was visited by various Japanese who were intrigued by Americans' woolen clothes, and according to Mr. Jagger, especially by the several Negroes in the crew, the blackest of whom was Pierce Concert and Gad Williams of Southampton. I'm going to skip over the rest of that. I'm going to go right to part that talks about the remarkable man. Though born a slave, he possessed virtues without which kings are but slave. So reads the epitaph cut into the handsome, polished black granite headstone over a grave in a shady corner of the old North End Cemetery on the heart of the village of Southampton. And all who doesn't know, you can actually go and see this. You go just past, it's right across from the dog park. You can see that right from the road. It marked the last resting place of Pierce Concert of Southampton, who died nearly 100 years ago at the age of 84, after a hard but remarkable and adventurous life that must have riveted those of most of his contemporaries. Farm worker, crew member on a non-famous whaling voyage to the Orient, prospector in the California gold rush of 1949, a church benefactor, Pierce Concert has earned a special place of honor among his fellow Southampton natives. His obituary in the local newspaper on August 28, 1897, noted that he was one of the most respected residents of the village. But was the man bearing the given name of a Greek king was reigned 200 years before Christ? Pierce Concert was indeed born a slave on March 17, 1814, in Southampton to a woman who was a slave. Nothing much is known about his youth, other than he was owned by the Peltro family and worked on the Charles Peltro farm. He was given his freedom by the Peltros when he was either 18 or 20, according to different accounts. I just want to interject. I looked up the history of slavery in New York, and it stated the state passed a 1799 law for gradual abolition after that date. Children born to slave mothers were freed but required to work for mother's master for an extended period of indentured servants into their 20s. This is all an educational thing. I think it's interesting for people to know all about this because a lot of people don't even know about Pierce Concert. And that's one of our missions. It appears that the former figure is correct, for his obituary says that when he was 18, he made his first whaling voyage from Captain Edward Sire. Many other voyages followed. The death notice also says that he went to California in 1849 when he was 35 during the gold fever, but returned home after a year's absence, a little richer in world's goods. But he was one of the links to bind Southampton to the past. This past includes voyage with Captain MacArthur Cooper of Southampton aboard the whale ship Manhattan, which dropped anchor in the forbidden port of Kyoto, now Tokyo, Japan, 8 years before Commando Matthew Perry arrived there. The voyage has been credited with preparing the way for Commodore's subsequent historic visit. Pierce Concert, according to early accounts, was the Manhattan's boat steerer. While the Manhattan lay an anchor for the 4 days of the harbor at Kyoto, Charles Jagger, in the first issue of Southampton magazine in 1912, hosted a Japanese visited the ship. Those of the common class were clothes of the blue cotton goods, those of rank wool silk. There were no wool worn by any of them, and they manifested the deepest interest in the woolen clothes of the sailors, and even fragrance of woolen cloth that they could procure, they took away with them. But the object of the greatest interest to the Japanese was the colored man on the ship. There were several Negroes on the crew, the blackest which, I think that's really interesting to keep emphasizing that, but anyway, the blackest was the late Pierce Concert and Gad Williams of Southampton. They used to tell with much amusement how the Japanese would gather around them and stare at them with wide open eyes and feel of their skin to see if the color would wear off. Black men was a new experience of them, Mr. Jagger wrote. Another latest account of the Manhattan visit in Japan was given by the late Arthur P. Davis of Southampton in his tract, A Black Diamond in the Queen's Tiara, which is published in 1974. Mr. Davis reports that the ship's crew was cautioned to make the best possible impression on Japanese who boarded the ship. The day of the emperor came aboard, special efforts were made to please them. This meant Pierce had to sing for them. There was no doubt the rescued sailors had often heard him while at his daily task aboard ship humming some slave song or tune or rejoicing over God his Savior. It is possible old hymns were some of the renditions and also some Stephen Fawcett's compositions, Mr. Davis writes. What became of Pierce Concert after that unparalleled adventure? Mr. Davis, writing in 1974, says that after Pierce returned to Southampton, we learned that the gold fever caused him to try out the realms of fortune by going to California. Only to return a year or so later, Pierce married and is well known. They lived in a comfortable cottage situated on the shore of Agawam Lake. In order to supplement his meager income, he sailed a small boat up and down Lake Agawam to the delight and comfort of old and young, Mr. Davis reports, and quotes the longtime chairman of Southampton Town Trustee, the late Robert Hubbard, as having recalled that as a boy of 10 or 12 years of age, he too had sailed with his brother around the lake at 10 cents a ride. Mr. Davis also writes of the dedication of some stone monument in Tokyo to the memory of Captain Cooper and the crew of Manhattan on July 18, 1972. The monument, sponsored by the Tokyo Rotary Clubs, was built at the recommendation of the former Vice President of ITT, Far East and Pacific, Howard Van Zandt, who wrote in a letter to Mr. Davis that at the dedication, a band played, Sancto Priest prayed, and the bunting waved in the breeze. I'm almost finished. At the conclusion of this article in the Southampton magazine, Mr. Jagger notes that of the 30 men who sailed aboard the Manhattan when it was visited, Japan, the name of only 11 men had survived. Ship logs of that time did not mention the names of the crew. A log of those days is merely a diary of the ship itself and the men aboard, or mere accessories of even the captain is not mentioned of record unless he writes his name on the flat leaf, says Mr. Jagger. It is a pity that all men who entered the forbidden harbor of Yodo of this memorable occasion cannot have the permanent history record most of their names. That the name of Pierce Constant is an incredible mark of permanent historical record is indisputable. His grave, with his telling appropriate emphasis, is quite tree-shaded southwest corner of Old North End Cemetery, is across the street and only the few hundred feet north of the home in which Captain MacArthur Cooper lived more than 100 years ago. Last page. At the dusk of December 28th, a crowd gathered on the northeast shore of Agawam Lake to take a look at the modest memorial that installed in honor of one of the village's favorite sons, Pierce Constant, who sailed with Captain MacArthur Cooper to Japan in the mid-1840s. The memorial, a heavy anchor and chain that was retrieved from the bottom of the lake near the dock where Mr. Constant moored his boat when he wasn't ferrying passengers to the ocean side. Mounted upright on the concert slab, there is also a bronze plaque afflicted on a rugged rock of granite that notes that the house where he lived off Pond Lane still exists. No comment. Because of the approaching darkness and a shield in the air, there was no formal ceremony of the memorial, but after a few moments, the crowd walked the short distance down Pond Lane to the Veterans Memorial Hall to enjoy refreshments and enjoy remembering Pierce Constant and to honor his memory. Speakers like Marvin Dozier from Unity Baptist Church said, a privileged moment, and he said, it is good to know that a black presence was here and that he was honored, and we are honoring Pierce Constant. He asked for a village of oneness. Robert Keene told the group that as town historian, he has been speaking to fourth graders about local history for years, and that from now on, he will have them visit the concert anchor, which was found in the lake by Eugene Dombrowski, a former village employee here. Some people, he said, has disputed the fact that the anchor belonged to Pierce Constant because of his size, but take a look at the picture of the man and the size of the mast he is holding in the Colonial Society photo collection. Pierce Constant, said Mr. Keene, was over 6 foot tall, handsome, a very popular, very happy man at the time when the village had no black community, no black church, so he joined the Presbyterian Church, and when he died, he left several $100s in the church. Last paragraph. Both Mayor Douglas Murtha and Centennial Chairman Roy L. Wines Jr. spoke briefly as well, and the Reverend Glenwood Morris of Southampton, pastor of St. Paul's Church in Riverhead, offered the closing prayer and urged, be concerned for all fellow man. And just, I don't know if you can see this, I just want to show you real quickly, and then I'm done. I'm going to turn this over to Bob Strada, and he's going to continue from here. Okay, I'm going to find this page. Oh, here it is. I shouldn't do this to myself, but I will. This was a picture of all the group of members of our community that came out. He had it this way. Okay, where do you want to do it? This way? Yes. Okay. And keep it still. Hold still. All right. All this new technique, I love it. And believe it or not, that's me right there.
What's the date on that?
1994. And believe it or not, that's me again right there. Over one. Right there. I will now pass this over to Bob Strada, our next dream team.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
I will be brief.
I had to do that. I had to do that. A lot of people don't know about it.
Well, they do now.
I know they do. You want to share right here?
I'm Robert Strada, and very happy to be here tonight. It was May 14th of last year that you received this summary of what happened in rescuing the Pierce Concert home. I'm going to go to a slide. Yeah. Anyone you want. Okay. So how about the one before that? Just where you were. That's it. So what we're looking at is the site of one of the earliest photographs that's on the cover of that report from over a year ago. But the reality is simply this, that what we've been able to preserve is a historic frame that really, I hadn't heard this story.
That's why I read it.
But the dates of that story coincide with what we had been suspecting was the age of these materials. When we were in the basement together and looking at those parallel sawn floor joists, when we were saying this is really an early 19th century structure and that it had signs of an even earlier, late 18th century sill made by with an axe, was all very interesting. But now putting it in the context of everything that we've investigated, everything that we've labeled, everything that we've preserved that can now be reconstructed, works very nicely with the dates that Brenda has given us. Mayor Epley was kind enough to go with me into the basement that day with all the spiders and the nails and everything else, and what we discovered were these very large historic joists, which we will use or will be used in the reconstruction of the Pierce Concert House, once again at 51 Pond Lane. And that what we learned was that the center section of this house was indeed not a house at all. I don't know if you recall that conversation we were having, but this structure was originally built. Can we go to
what?
One of the other slides? One more. There we go. What you're seeing here, and I know it doesn't look like much of a slide, but the reality was that as we were taking apart the historic frame, we were able to identify how the materials were actually fabricated when they were new. And all of the techniques that went into this fabrication were techniques that were never used in the 20th century. They weren't even used in the late 19th century. They were used in the early to mid 19th century. So that works to the point of Concert having taken, or someone related to Concert having taken what was a utility building, like a small barn. And what we learned is that it was constructed without any source of heating. There was no original fireplace. That came later. We even found signs or indications that part of the frame had burned. There was a fire in the building, probably somewhere in the later part of the 19th century. And we have photographs of all of that. But let me just end with this, because I think this is the most significant part. The reality is that there is no question that this is a historic building. And by the standards that even the National Trust for the Preservation of Historic Buildings would apply, this building is really a candidate for recognition on the national level, just for what it is, let alone the fact that it's related to such an important individual. And I'm going to just close with this, that when you think back to when we did this, was over 2 years ago. And in the last 2 years, everyone has been working very hard to begin to piece this together for this session tonight, dovetailing the work that they did before 2 years ago. This has been going on for many years. But I just want to thank you for taking those steps, the initiative, back in 2014, when all of this could have been lost, could have gone nowhere, could have gone to the dump. And the reality is, the village stepped up, made the hard decision, and saved a very important structure that honors a very important man. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Good evening. It's been a long, long day for me. My name is Georgette Greer-Key. I'm the Executive Director of Eastville Community Historical Society. I'm also the current President of the Association of Suffolk County Historical Societies. And I'm here today because I was involved with this structure through PCAC, which we came together around, unfortunately, what was going on with this building by way of Scalia. We are the Paris Concert Action Committee, and it's made up of individuals, it's made up of community, concerned citizens, and volunteers. Together, PCAC promotes the preservation, enhancement, and long-term sustainability of African American traditions and choice. PCAC seeks to combine access and also education so that the material contributions of African Americans here in this village and in this nation are given recognition. And more specifically, that concert's achievements become a living part of this community heritage that we have here in Southampton. I think it's important to say that people that have been a part of this team from earlier on have been Brenda Simmons, myself, Tom Edmonds, Lucius Ware, and Sally Spanberg. And I'd like to also thank the town of Southampton for also working with us on a regular basis. The mayor and the village board, earlier on the ARB that we had interactions with, and many of the people that are here tonight to support us, Fred Thiel and also Bridget Flemings. So it's really important for us to talk about the collective action of how you can make change. The next slide. The Paris Concert Action Committee has worked tirelessly to bring to fruition what we see as preserving his legacy. We were committed throughout this process, if we did not have the tangible house, that we would continue to talk about his legacy. And through those efforts, there have been many presentations. Just this past spring, I presented at the New York State Preservation 50 Years of Preservation Conference in New York City. And the title of that paper was called Vetting, Value, and Validation, an analysis of plural sites associated with African American history, downstate versus upstate, because this is not just going on in this region. Throughout the region, people are trying to figure out how do you preserve history that may not be tied to classical techniques or classical architecture, and I think that was part of our early problem, but also recognizing the cultural significance of who these people were, what they stood for, and how they were able to build a life against all odds. So we've done several talks about this throughout, and it's really important to us to make sure that African American history is not a subset, that it is a part of American history, and that's really important to us. We also think that moving forward, in order to have this building be sustainable, and as I said, I work with over 119 historical societies, and we know through science, research, that a standalone historic house will not work. A lot of these individual historic houses that do not have modern day amenities, they fail. If you think about some of the museums that you may have visited as a kid, and they have the same exhibition that's been there for 50 years, why would you go back as an adult? Other than taking your school kid on a trip and you're being a chaperone. So we want to make sure that we're able to employ not only restoration of this house, but employ mixed use, readaptive use, to make sure that we're able to move forward and have sustainability over time with the building. With that being said, we're here tonight because we wanted to present not just the history of Paris Concert to those who may not know, but also to present and ask the board to accept this design plan, and also to solidify and formalize the relationship of the design team that has been working all of this time. The first phase that we see in doing this work was planning. We've been meeting on a monthly basis for the last 10 months to talk about ideas and look at research that helps us. And what we have discovered is what we kind of already knew, that in order to have this building be viable for the greater community and to serve the taxpayer dollars that has gone to preserve it, we need to make sure that it's not just a historic house that is going to stand there and in 50 years be in the same condition that it is in now, needing of repairs and being kind of a money pit. So what we've done is we worked with the village, we worked with Southampton Town about what we could and could not do, and what we've discovered is through this IMA agreement through the town and the village that you kind of lay it out for us what we can do. If we break apart the preamble, we see that it says the parties desire to arrange a long-term agreement for operation and management of the land and structures, including reconstruction. Let's stop there. When the design team will come up, they will show you that the first phase of this project is about reconstructing the original structure. But then as the preamble goes on, it does say that also the intended uses for historical education, park facilities, and cultural amenities. So we see this project in more than just one phase. The first phase is to do what your agreement says that you're going to do. Reconstruct the original house, okay. But in order to handle the other parts of the preamble is to look at how we can provide these services of education. You need space for that. How we can provide public use, so by way of park land, park facilities. So in our design plan, we tried to look at the preamble and take our direction from there, also synthesizing with the preamble, but what we know from the science and technology and all of these different things that will be needed to provide the type of education that's necessary for today's generation that are highly technical. So that's what we looked at for many of what we see. But now, it's always comes down to the bottom line. We are grateful that the agreement stands, that you guys are willing to reconstruct the original structure. But now, how do we handle phases 2 or 3 or 4, whatever we see? How are we going to handle that? It has to be a collective. It has to be a joint partnership. It has to be a partnership between the Southampton African American Museum, the Peerless Concert Action Committee, and also the Village of Southampton by way of Village Board resolution and agreement. And the reason why I say that is because we've not only looked for research methods or how we attack the design, we also looked at how funding could be implemented. And most of the grants that we identified call for a direct licensing agreement between the village, the municipality, and a nonprofit organization. We've also identified grants that do just the opposite. They cannot go through a nonprofit. They have to go through the coffers of the village. And also then there's private money. We have identified grants that have large amounts of re-granting capability to match the money that we see, but the only way to do that is to have a formalized relationship. And that's what we're asking tonight. We're asking for you to look at the design. We also want you to know that this design wasn't dropped out of the sky. We looked at several examples across the country, and I would venture to say that this will be the first museum regionally and beyond regionally, tri-state area, to be built specifically for the purpose of celebrating an African American. Just later this month, the National African American Museum is opening after 30 years of planning in Washington at the Smithsonian. And they know who we are. We have support from the National Trust for Historic Places. We have a lot of national support, and for the most part, Brenda covered a lot of the historic facts, but this in itself is so important. I can't stress you the fact that the Northeast has escaped the whole narrative of slavery. And we look at Pierre Esconce's life, we not only see slavery, we're not just, subjugated to the slave narrative, but we also see that he was a philanthropist, that he was an integral part in this community. And I think that his life and the celebration can continue if we have the space to do it. Thank you very much.
Sure, Jen. You okay, Bill? Yeah. Send Steve over there to help you out.
I felt that.
You get stuck under the table or what? So.
This is dead. First of all, we are honored to be asked to participate in this project. I'm Bill Chaliff from Chaliff and Rogers Architects. My partner Paul Rogers is here as well. And we have been working with Eastville for some time, for 3 or 4 years, I guess it is, and come to know Georgette. And again, it was a great honor and privilege to be asked to work with him on this project. Once again,
Bill, he wants you to
That is working. You got to work.
it is working?
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry.
You were hiding under the table so you couldn't hear it.
That's right, that's right, right.
You take the rope if you want, Bill. It's easier.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Stephen. But we have had a history of working with older buildings in the region, and we also, again, have a history of working on community-oriented projects. It goes back over 30 years. The building that we're about to show you didn't just materialize out of thin air. We spent many hours with the design team developing a program, initiated always with the community. And Brenda and Georgette handed us a paper and had many discussions about what they thought the building should have. And we exploded that into a master plan for the site, and started to size up, spaces that would support the programs that they had in mind. So this is a brief outline of the program. And having developed that, we developed the scheme that you now see in front of you. The Paris Concert House is the gray rectangle that sits parallel to Pond Lane on the right side of the property. At the end of that existing concrete stair, we thought that for the time being that stair would remain. It looks to have been originally built on axis with what we think was the front door to the building. It was obviously built much, much later than the original building, but for the time being, we'll leave that in that place. So this means that all the other supporting structures have to lie well in back of that. We're honoring and respecting the village setback requirements of 20-foot minimum side yard, that's to the north, the top of the screen, and 25 feet to the south for a combined minimum required side yard setback of 45 feet, and the rear of 60. So there is, along the south line, currently a right-of-way that services a lot that's off the screen to the left, which we know these days we call them flag lots. So that flag, it doesn't have its own flag pole. It's a right-of-way over the property of 51 Pond Lane. So we will leave that intact where it is and use it for staff parking and handicap parking space, which will also double as a drop-off for a little shuttle bus if people need to come up that way. But what we have worked out and engineered is that red brick pathway coming right down to Pond Lane, and it is serpentine because the site is severely sloped if you're in a wheelchair, And otherwise, you might not really understand that to be a problem, but if you're in a wheelchair, you would recognize soon enough that it's a tremendous problem. So this is the pathway that is for everyone to come from the park and work their way back. It is a park in of itself, and you see the Pyrrhus Concert House, you walk along the side of the house, and you come up to that round brick pad, which is another gathering spot before you go into the building, which is the white rectangle between the upper and the lower gray rectangles. The pathway is interwoven with a waterway, a water course, and there are 2 small ponds, some waterfalls. Because water was such an integral part of Pyrrhus's history and life, we thought it was appropriate to do this. It also, again, we're trying to draw people from the park and from the sidewalk, which is over 100 feet distance, to come into the front of the museum. So we need to make that a comfortable walkway. We need to make it an interesting walkway. And there are benches at several positions, several stops for resting as you approach the building. You come into the white rectangle, and from on the south side is a smaller gray rectangle that represents a building that's almost the same size as the Pyrrhus Concert House, and it will be made out of this. It will be a wood structure and have the same roof pitch as the Pyrrhus Concert House. So in a way, it echoes and connects us to the Pyrrhus Concert House. The white lobby that you can enter from the east or the west. If you come in by vehicle or bus, then you would enter from the west, and if you're coming up the footpath, you enter from the east. And then you will buy your tickets or meet the staff or have posed questions. That's in the south, and then go through into the main building, which has 2 large multifunctional spaces separated by a folding wall so that they can be conjoined to be one large multi-purpose space. It has display area, it has a program room and bathrooms. There's little more than that. There's storage down below, serviced by a staircase and an elevator, which opens directly into that entry vestibule. Right. And this is what it looks like if you're a bird hovering over the southeast corner at Pond Lane at the driveway. And the Pyrrhus Concert House, rebuilt and restored, is white in the foreground, and we've tried to make these quiet buildings in the back, and keep them as far away from the Pyrrhus Concert House as we could, to reflect the original setting and not interfere with that building in any way. It's a one-story buildings behind, and in the front, when you can see that the curb line, which is that white diagonal line on the lower right-hand corner of the screen, there's a bench, and the first stop on your walkway as you come up is a kiosk, and that kiosk we propose would be where tickets for the ferry would be sold, and in addition, it would provide initial contact information with the museum and the programs therein. Right? And this is as you get to the top. The building is a one-story brick building. It will be built to the strictest standards of conserving historic material artifacts, that is, maintain constant 70 degrees at 50 degrees relative humidity. It has clear stories to the north over the main spaces, and we're showing sloping roofs at the same pitch as the Pyrrhus Concert House, and at this point we're envisioning photovoltaic cells on those sloping surfaces. The building will be some kind of dark brick or masonry at this point. Again, we're trying to minimize the mass and minimize the noise, the visual noise. So these are simple, quiet buildings. We minimize the mass by dividing it into 2 two buildings with the glass connection. There's a sections through the building. The museum part itself with the two clear stories you can see in the bottom section more clearly has a large basement for storage, which will also be controlled in a controlled environment. You can see the little link to the left of that, and then the staff building on the south to the left of the entranceway. Up above, you're seeing a section going the long way through the site with the kiosk on the left, all the way down the left, and slicing through the Pyrrhus Concert House, and then the museum up the hill. The Pyrrhus Concert House, as best as we can tell, originally was not built on a full foundation, but because one of the major features of that building was to find intact the original floor framing system, which again is all, as Bob explained to you, 18th century and earlier technologies. We want that to be viewed from below as well as above, so we will provide a full basement in the new building, right? And that's from the kiosk. And from Pond Lane. So there's a first stop, again, a little bench and a pond there, which is, of course, obviously recirculated constantly to make the little water course, right? And the existing concrete walkway on the right, right? And there will also be an outdoor, and we're calling it an amphitheater at this point, of approximately 100 seats or less. And when you sit there, as there's a little figure indicated, you will be looking out at the Pyrrhus Concert House and over that and see the village green, Agawam Park, Lake Agawam, and much of the village from that elevation. And now I hand this over to Paul Rogers.
After you got to look at all those beautiful color pictures, now I have the black and white stuff, which is all the exciting stuff about the dollars. We discussed how the project might take place. Obviously, the primary objective is to get the concert house reconstructed, and there's a possibility of grants that may be available in the very near future, and it's conceivable that the house could be considered shovel-ready in a very short time. Drawings can be done. We've discussed the application to the ARB, getting on the docket, and we think that we can push that forward. I guess I should back up a little bit. We did these cost estimates based on the possibility or probability that the project would have to take place over time. We're allowing 9 months, we figured, for the completion of the concert house from this point. Then there are 2 other phases which are represented by the drawings that you just saw. The first one is the one for which obviously the dollars need to be set aside as soon as possible or identified. Phase 2, well, in Phase 1 also there is a cottage on the property which is not in terribly good condition. It's not a historic structure, and it is not of any particular note in any other way. However, we feel that it is possible that can provide a meaningful contribution to the overall project, because it can provide a place for some people to meet there, to have an office, to create a presence on the site while the house is being renovated. And it's been suggested that the village crews could probably do the minimal work that would have to be done to spruce that up and make it usable as a small office building. It would also provide a place where there could be a conference table where plans could be looked at and people who might be potential donors could come to the site and it would be a presence. So we feel that that building should be retained and possibly a small amount of resources put to it to make it a usable office for a temporary period of time, after which it would be demolished. That would be phase one, and I think we also included the kiosk in phase one because we feel that the ferry service is already up and running with a few bumps along the way, but I think by next summer it should be running more smoothly, and I think that could be a really nice little feature for starting to tie the site together with Agawam and giving it some purpose. So we include the kiosk, the cost to recreate the house and to renovate the cottage in the phase one, and we have a budget of $590,000 for that. Phase two and three could be combined and would actually be more cost-effective if they were, because you'd only be tackling a construction project once. We sort of considered the possibilities for money coming in and the efforts that would be required to raise the money, so we divided it into those two phases. Phase two would essentially be the creation of the new administration building, which Bill mentioned, that looks sort of like it's patterned on the concert house. It was a wood structure with wood shingles, and that would provide a much more meaningful and orderly place for an administration to begin to take shape. At that point, the small cottage would be demolished. We would put the parking area in so that the staff would have some place to park up at the top of the hill. There would probably have to be a temporary walkway for people to negotiate the winding path up to the building. Then the demolition of the cottage. And we have a budget there of $375,000. And the big one, of course, is the visitor center itself and related site features, which include the walkway, the water course, the amphitheater, and that we're looking at possibly taking 4 years to get to. And the cost estimates are sort of based on projections of that going forward. So we come just under $2.4 million for that portion. And I think that's the end of our presentation.
It is.
Okay. Wow. Oh, thank you guys for all the work here. Anybody from the board want to have any comments? I do want to say that, the village, okay?
May we ask where funding would start for this project, and what is the estimated maintenance per year?
No. The question for anybody who didn't hear it is, where does the funding for these projects come from, and the cost of maintenance of this. So I don't know what the maintenance costs would be associated with the fully built-out project. And phase one, I mean, the village, to go back to something, Bob Strata said, and he thanked the village board for stepping up to save this, but the reality is I really have to thank, Brenda and Bridget Fleming and Fred Thiel and Georgette for really, you guys are the ones who stepped up to really save the property in this location. So I know when we talked about when we saved the structure itself, in order to keep the historical significance and the status of that property, of that structure, you actually needed to rebuild the structure on that property. So what these guys did to save that property and use CPF funds to protect that is a reason why your question actually becomes important, because grant opportunities, because of the historical standing of the site and the individual that owned the house and the actual structure itself, it affords us a lot of opportunities to raise money, which will help us in phase 1, 2, and 3. So the village is a commitment to this project, and the use of the CPF was that we would rebuild the original structure on site. And part of the team was that in order to continue to make that a sustainable site, so it just wasn't an empty piece that, once a year we had a party at, that it was something that people went to on a frequent basis. It was to build additional components to that, which is the challenge that we place with the Pierce Concert Action Committee. And as a team, we go out and we write grants, and grants are stronger when it's a private-public partnership that we've developed there. So we have the numbers around this. Phase 1 we know is a $590-something thousand. There's monies that we can access there. There's grant monies that we can access to do this. But the key for us was putting a plan together to help us take these steps. So looking at the cost of operating, we'll have to look at that. The village is maintained. Actually, the site is in not good condition right now. I was there on Sunday walking the site. There's vandalism and graffiti on the site. And so we're going to remove hedges. We're going to replace some of the fence line there. We're going to replace we're going to remove the vandalized fence that's up there. And we're going to look to put some cameras on the property to ensure the safety of the remaining structure, and also that there's a hole there that they're going to do fencing around. So we're going to put some effort into it in the next couple of weeks to clean that property up, which is important. So I don't know if I answered your question completely, but these are the beginning stages, and what I can't emphasize enough how important this is to our community, because he was a big part of this community, and it's been a rough go, but the reality is that it's been such a fantastic educational opportunity for everybody around here that, it's been worth the ride, the wild ride. So, I don't, Assemblyman Thiel, Legislator Fleming, do you guys want to speak and say some stuff here? Okay. Yeah.
For most people, they say that their greatest fear is public speaking unless you're an elected official. Your greatest fear is that someone won't ask you to speak. So, I just want to commend, first of all, Brenda and Georgette and everybody that's been involved with this, and the village. This has not been easy. If there was anything easy about this, I missed it. But we're in a very good place, and this is one of the primary reasons that the CPF was created. We talk about open space and farmland preservation, but it's also about historic preservation, and this is a perfect example of that. So I'm just here, first of all, to show my support for this project. But I remember sitting in your office, Mayor, and if we talked about if we had been fortunate enough to be able to preserve the property, what would happen next. And I committed to you that we would work to find state historic preservation grants and state community facilities grants. In the past, I've been successful with Senator Laval to be able to do that for Sylvester Manor, for example, on Shelter Island. We're not running away from you. We're going to be here to try to work with you to find state funding, preservation funding, historic preservation funding, to be able to, at least, we'll focus on the one phase at a time here. And, that original commitment was to see that house reconstructed on that site. So, it's September. Before you know it, the budget cycle will start in Albany. And I'm glad that we have all of this detail now and these budget estimates, because this will help us and help myself and Senator Laval work with you to try to find funding sources for this project. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate being invited to be here tonight.
Thanks. Legislator Fleming.
Thank you, Mayor Epley. Thank you for inviting me up. And I, like Fred, am here
well, I don't know, I wouldn't say that for Fred, but I'm here primarily to express my support for this project. It's one of the proudest things that I had the opportunity to do as a councilwoman in Southampton in the 6 years that I was there. And I have to say, it's the miracle of the Community Preservation Fund that allowed us to do it. You know, we spent $4.3 million to acquire the property that you're going to be able to reconstruct the house on, and it was really the right thing to do, and I'm very proud to have been part of it. The county, on the other hand, is broke. So I can't say that I can identify any specific funding source to help you, but certainly we did actually just we just approved at the Water Quality Committee, just approved the Lake Agawam stormwater recharge project that I compliment you on, and that includes Pond Lane. So it's, you know, we are committed to a continual vibrant downtown village of Southampton, and I think this is part of it. But very, very proud, especially because you have this team that Bob Strata and the architects who preserve the physical stuff, and then the people on the Pierce Concert Action Committee who kept the vision alive and just really hounded all of us in public office to do the right thing. And I think we have, and I applaud you, and I look forward to seeing how the project proceeds.
By the way, hounded is the right word.
Although it didn't take that much to pull us over to your side.
So I actually know how to make the county some money now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so you sell the village back the county park at the end of Meadow Lane. I get rid of some lawsuits and beach driving stuff. And
we have a similar problem with beach access. I didn't leave that problem behind in the town of Southampton because we have Cupsog, as you know.
Oh, I know.
It's also extremely important, and I fully support beach access as I have.
Yeah, well, you sell us that county park right there, and then would help us. So
happy to talk about it. But this is a fabulous project. Very proud to have been part of it.
Well, you're a big part of it. So.
Oh, and I do want to mention, actually, thank you, Paul, that the Community Preservation Fund, for folks who don't know, is a 2% transfer tax on property transfers over $250,000 that has provided the funding for the purchase of this land, which, as you know, is significantly high property value. Fred Thiel is one of the authors of it, and I have to say, is one of the most elegant pieces of legislation I've ever seen. It solves a problem with, not a problem, it solves a challenge with the activity that creates the challenge. So it uses property transfers to preserve open space and community character, farmland, and historic resources. So we have a referendum on in November. There will be a referendum on the regular ballot in the elections to extend that fund and to use it for water quality projects. So it's a very important thing to bear in mind, but it was really, the CPF is what allowed us to save this house. So thank you very much.
Board, have any other questions, comments? Okay. Anybody from the public would like to make comment in reference to this presentation? We'll open that up if anybody wants to do that. So, yeah. Well, thank you guys for the presentation, the project, the efforts, all of this, and we're going to work on next steps are going to be about funding phase 1 and then looking at what we have to do. I think there's some discussions around some resolutions that will help us from a grant standpoint that we've got to have discussions about, and so that's where. Yeah, so the next meeting we'll be coming back with some other stuff that will help us access grant monies and stuff. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Okay. Okay. All right, so we have an ongoing public hearing on North Sea Road rezoning, and I shouldn't say rezoning, North Sea Road master plan update. Rick, did you want to make comment around this?
Well, nothing, unless you want me to repeat what I said.
Just if
at
you
the
want to
meeting.
briefly, see with some new faces.
The process is, if it goes forward all the way, is a three-step process. The first step is where we are now. We're having public hearings to consider whether to amend our comprehensive plan with respect to the office district in the North Sea Road corridor. That's what we're going through now. If you ended up amending the master plan to include this study as part of it, then the next step would be actual zoning amendments that local law would be prepared, setting forth the amendments to the zoning code that would follow from the study, and there would be public hearing process on that, whether to adopt that local law. If that local law got adopted, then the third step would be if an individual property owner, what we're talking about here is possibility of some limited retail use in this overlay district that would be created, and the limited retail use would be a special permit application to the Board of Trustees. So if some property owner in this area wanted to redevelop the property for a potential retail use within the limitations and standards that are in the study, they would have to apply to the Board of Trustees for a special permit before it could go any further.
Thanks, Rick. Anybody from the board wanted to make a comment in reference to this? No? Okay. Bo?
Is this, can you hear?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
I'd like to make a couple comments generally this evening, and then address some comments to the report of the Gibbs Group that was submitted last month. Mike Rousseau is here from Nelson Pope and Voorhees, and I'm sure he'll have some more comments that are regarding that that are a little bit more technical and erudite than I might provide, but I nevertheless want to address a couple of issues raised by that report. So permit me to go back a little bit in time to explain where this came from, and that is the observance that since the zoning change in 1973, which created this office district zone out of or from the then existing retail zone, there were only 2 buildings that were built that were permitted conforming uses. One of those buildings now has been converted into a bank use, leaving only one local law office as the sole building built in the last 43 years in this area. And I've got to think, and I did think, it said that there's seemingly something wrong with the zone that has existed for this long amount of time, and there's only been one conforming new use added. Yet the road itself is, to some degree, reasonably prosperous. And that reason is because there are pre-existing non-conforming retail uses from which those property owners benefit, while the other properties that weren't developed in that manner or for that use or not developed at all really have little limited options. Out of the 10 permitted uses in the office district zone, about the only functional use is the office, the general office. There is a medical office and a bank. Then we have such uses as a public library, a fire department, a funeral home, parks, and none of those really have any viability today, especially in Southampton. So you're really talking, and a medical arts building with regarding what's going on with, you know, this country and medicine is just really not going to work on lots that are that small. The doctors that were in the office across from Schmidt's have moved to a larger building out on County Road 39, abandoning that use, and that was picked up and then is used as a bank. So this was the suggestion, to take a look at this and try and do something in a limited retail way to put some viability back in this road and let those owners that can benefit from this or choose to take advantage of it put some equity into their property and improve it. And Nelson Pope and Voorhees was retained by the trustees after this was forwarded from the Planning Commission. They signed a 3-page agreement with the village to do an unbiased, independent, objective study. They were told to provide no specific conclusion, just research this and conclude what you conclude from the facts you've researched. Their study area included, now this is the study area, because what's happened in the last couple of weeks with me is people are coming up to me and commenting on this, and the first thing I find out that they have no understanding of the facts or circumstances of what's going on. So the study area in the North Sea Road corridor, which was entitled by Nelson Pope to include Windmill Lane, but only included that part of it above Lola Prentice Park, included 77 parcels. Primarily on the west side of that corridor, on North Sea Road, north of the cemetery, there are 26 parcels. On the east side, there are 17. It's a total of 43. After Nelson Pope did the study with 77, they deleted 33 parcels. The only remaining parcels in the study area, which would be the overlay zone area, are contiguous to North Sea Road. If you look at Sanford Place, there are a number of parcels that are in the office district east of North Sea Road. Those are excluded. There are a number of parcels that are on the unnamed road that go up by the Sons of Gideon Lodge. They're excluded. So this core overlay area now exists basically from the north side of White Street, including the Bennett Law Office, and the north side of the cemetery, that triangle in North Sea Road, Windmill Lane. It includes the restaurant and then the east and west sides of North Sea Road. Of those 43 parcels, depending upon how you count them, I counted 43, Nelson Pope got 44. 16, or 37%, are pre-existing non-conforming retail. The remaining 11 have, so the remainder include other parcels which have other uses that are not retail but pre-existing or conforming. And that would be the 2 banks. There are a couple residences. There's a couple medical arts buildings. But out of all the remaining parcels, the 26, there's basically 11, 12, or 13 parcels, depending upon the accounting, that would benefit in the reasonable future from this overlay zone. If you look at the west side of North Sea Road, the Suffolk County National Bank is in the highway business zone, as are the properties to the north of it. The 7-Eleven is in the highway business zone. Going back to the west side, with the African American Museum now in operation, no part of this overlay zone would be north of Hillcrest. And as a matter of fact, if you go back to West Prospect Street or south, there's only one parcel from West Prospect Street to County Road, to the Gulf Station, that would be in this overlay zone, and that's the Clanman property. So we're talking about a reasonably small portion of this small portion of the village that's involved in this overlay zone. The linear distance from the National Grid property to from West Prospect north is 1,415 feet. Excuse me, from White Street to the National Grid is 1,415 feet. And out of that, 62% is pre-existing retail. So the study that the Gibbs Group did in 2013 was the basis upon which a lot of this rests. And that study determined that by the year 2017, 3 or 4 months from now, the village could expand and absorb another 114,000 square feet of retail space. Could partially, and then said it could partially be absorbed with the opening of 30 to 40 new restaurants and businesses. I quite frankly can't fathom how that can happen. The Gibbs study specifically found that the retailer is located along North Sea Road, which serves as the main street. It's located along Hill Street, Montauk Highway, Hampton Road, and 1 mile south of 27. The existing retail in the village's vicinity is limited mostly to food and convenience goods and services, but exceptional freeway and local street access along North Sea Road is available. I don't know where Mr. Gibbs thought that the space in the core district existed to allow for any portion of 117,000 square feet of new retail space would come from. In its report on page 22, Nelson Pope observed that the core area is virtually built out or maximized at the present time. And if you look at a couple of statistics, it's really sort of very interesting. The code provides that for every 180 square feet of retail space, you need 1 parking space. Nelson Pope and Voorhees calculated that 1 parking space requires about 300 square feet of area. That's the space for the car park itself, plus the alley or the access in back of it. And they didn't include setbacks, aisles between parking, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's more like 350, but if you considered it was 325, and you divided that into, if you took the acreage required for that, if you took the 350 per space, that would, 114,000 square feet would consume 636 spaces. That's an area, based upon that calculation, of over 5 acres. That space just doesn't exist. If you want a perspective, there are 208 lined spaces in the Hildreth parking lot in back of us. So that it would take 3 of those areas to provide the parking, the off-street parking, for this added space. And that just is not going to happen. It's not available. The village has a provision in the code whereby you can, if you want to expand a retail village business zone, you can buy a parking space. So the most recent example of that is what is known as 9 Main Street, which is a building north of the alley of the south building that used to be the Corinth Pharmacy. That owner wanted to expand by adding a 2nd floor to the building, a total of 2,840 square feet. The code translated into, with a reduction of 60%, an additional 10 parking spaces. At $8,000, that would be another $80,000 to complete that project. If you took the $8,000 and multiplied it by the 636 spaces, you get something in the range of $5 million that the village could get by selling spaces. But as we all know, those spaces don't really exist. What you're really buying is a theoretical parking space. So I thought this was an interesting calculation. A couple of years ago, so let's say the village wanted to go out and buy some area for parking spaces to afford the other people the opportunity to expand their buildings. So the property that's Barristers was sold the year before last for $4 million. That property is 4,200 square feet. The building is 95% of the property. That would yield 14 parking spaces. And if you divided that into the purchase price, you get a price of $285,000 per parking space. And then if the village said, well, let's go to another area less expensive, there was a property over on Lewis Street that was sold last year, and the house was demolished. So basically, the purchaser was buying the property. The purchase price of that was $1,916,000. The property is 15,179 square feet. That translates into $38,000 per parking space. So the fact that the Gibbs Group said that this area could be expanded by this much, I think is really extremely highly over the real practical rate that this would have. I don't mean to criticize our proposal here, but what I'm saying is, with 13 parcels on that road potentially taking advantage of this overlay zone, it's very difficult for me to understand how this group came up with 14,000 square feet of expanded retail space, and that could be then reverted back to the core area, which they commented in their report of August. They said that the language was very interesting. It referred to that the area the retail space could be accommodated by sales and marketing. And sales and marketing are not hard pavement parking spaces. So the Nelson Pope report, I think, is broad-based. It's reasonable. It focused on the fact that it was trying to preserve the core area businesses. That was a major concern for the Planning Commission. I think this accomplishes that. The uses that are selected are 9 retail uses to create the opportunity for more modest businesses, moderate-sized parcels. Nelson Pope had said preferred land uses are also those which will provide reasonably priced products and services supplying local year-round residents' needs rather than high-end boutique shopping. Another perspective is that there are 264, by street count, 2 years ago, businesses in the core area of Hampton Road, Main Street, and Jobs Lane, 264. If you take the 77 parcels in the study group and subtract the 4 or 5 vacant pieces and a couple of others that will never be converted, such as the 2 properties the village owns, the museum, the National Grid property, you get about 68. So that's a roughly 330 total parcels. Of that number, 13 parcels which might benefit from this group represent about 5% of the total village parcels. That is not, by any standards, in my opinion, a great leap forward in trying to burden the roadways or any other part of the village with this project. Gibbs actually came up with some formulas and projections. They had projected that grocery would occupy 30,000 square feet of the 114,000. Food and restaurants, 26,200. And I just don't understand where this could happen. Restaurants, by the way, are a special exception use in both the village business and the office district. And there's been no restaurant out on North Sea Road. In fact, there's been no restaurant that I know of built in the village since 1973. The space is just not available to comply with the health department requirements that would be required to generate a restaurant. And many people are coming up to me now and saying, well, I don't want another McDonald's on North Sea Road. I don't know where this information comes from because it just can't happen. It's not permitted in the uses proposed by Nelson Pope, and it's just not going to happen because of the requirements of the health department. So Gibbs had provided some comments, and I'm sure Mike can address these. Nelson Pope has provided a 6-page report in reply to this, but just to go through a couple of these or whatever. The retail demand. Does anybody, I'm reading articles every so often in publication about the lack of office demand. There's been no office demand for this. The doctors that were here left. The local law office is an office, self-used, but I don't see the reason and the motivation for anybody to build an office building and think that there's a market today to rent that. The Gibbs Group did not challenge the Nelson Pope theory that modest-sized businesses could exist out there for local needs and products and services. Gibbs Group criticized the impact on residences in that area, which I don't understand, because this area applies only to those properties along North Sea Road. It preserves the 50-foot transition yard where a property is next to a residential zone. It basically retains the zoning dimensions that exist now in the office district. Nelson Pope reduced by 5 feet the front yard setback, but increased by 5 feet the rear yard setback. Gibbs criticized this as being aesthetically unpleasing and create a single building landscape. That's what it is now. The only opportunity here is to make the buildings better. Nelson Pope has provided, I think, about a dozen architectural guidelines that could be incorporated into the law. You had questioned that before. So that has all been taken care of in this report. I just find the criticisms raised by this report to be not substantiated by any facts or documents. It seems to be rather anecdotal comments, and 90% of what is said here has been already addressed by Nelson Pope and Voorhees. So I think that this is not just an issue of retail in Southampton or North Sea Road versus the core district. We're all very concerned about, with good cause, retail expanding in other areas of the town. That was the Tuckahoe issue, and I think the village took the right side of that. But if these services and goods aren't provided in the village, people are going to go elsewhere. Businesses will go elsewhere, and people will go elsewhere, and that's ultimately going to hurt this village. I would like to think we're all in this together, but I am questioning that. I've heard the commentary and read the dissertations by the Southampton Association, which is sad, in my opinion. For your information, I went to that group and wrote them a letter in March of 2013, in April of 2013, after the Gibbs Group had come out with their study. Nobody rejected that. Indeed, it was accepted and proposed to the village. And I asked to address the board of directors about this project. I did so in a meeting in May over here in the UBS building one Saturday morning. Some of the people that were there that day are here tonight. And after making the presentation, I asked if there were any questions. There were a couple. Did anybody have any objections? No. And I said, well, would you please support the project? And nothing is ever said or done until this is now before the board. And then there is this wave of sort of hostility and antagonism about this project, as if some part of the village is being destroyed. I think those people are probably well-meaning. They just have a vision of Southampton as sort of reactionary, where nothing happens, nobody's changed. If somebody wants to go on a Saturday to the cheese shop to get coffee, there shouldn't be anybody in line in front of them. There shouldn't be any traffic on the road. And I just don't see how that works. Traffic is not a bad thing. If you look at the media on the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend after Black Friday, what do you hear? Story after story about how busy Black Friday was and how the merchants have been saved from doom by the sales on Black Friday. And how does anybody know that? Because all they do is show you pictures of full parking lots at shopping centers. You can't have it both ways. You can't have a viable business and a viable community with people coming here and wanting to be here. They're going to drive, they're going to want to park, and there's going to be traffic. If you don't want any traffic and you want to go to the post office at 12 o'clock during the lunch rush hour and not have any traffic, you're going to be disappointed. I don't see this burdensome of the village. Today is a demarcation of the pedestrian activity on Main Street. From today to next May, this is an entirely different community than it is for the 3 months in the summer. And I think that what is proposed here is reasonable, that it's necessary. It helps this zone progress and the village progress. We'll never know if it's going to work unless we try. And I'm asking you to see fit to continue with this and give this zone the opportunity to change. Thank you.
Mike?
For the record, Mike Brusso from Nelson Pope and Voorhees.
Excuse me one second.
I'm sorry.
All right, somebody's going to present. Okay. All
We
right,
had a conversation before he did.
All right.
I thought he was going to show that, and he didn't.
Okay.
So I still don't know what parcels we're talking about.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe Mike will be able to answer that stuff. So.
For the
okay.
record, my name is Mike Brusso. I'm a planner with Nelson Pope and Voorhees, and during the last public hearing, we had received the letter from Gibbs Planning Group that afternoon, and I had indicated in the hearing that we would provide you with responses to those comments, and we have submitted those, and they were submitted this afternoon for the record. A lot of the things that Mr. Robinson had mentioned that were things that I was going to touch on, but essentially it is a very limited area along North Seed Road, and it only includes those properties within the office district, and it only includes those properties that front on North Sea Road. Basically, right now, about a third of those properties are commercial uses, and many of those are pre-existing, legally pre-existing, and some of those are permitted by special exception permit. So there are also, within that overlay district, there's 11 office properties, 5 residents, and 2 vacant parcels. 8 of the parcels are utilities, or municipal government like the post office, and open space down by the 7-Eleven area. So again, a lot of those properties won't be developed, they couldn't be developed, and are very unlikely to be developed. Some of them will never be, for sure. In terms of some of the impacts that the Gibbs Group mentioned in their memorandum, I also kind of get this feeling that maybe they didn't read the report. They raised issues about traffic and noise and trash and things like that, trash generation. But if you go through the report, you'll see a number of special exception criteria or recommendations for the development of special exception criteria for uses, limited business uses. And those special exception recommendations address these issues, and they address a lot more than that. And actually, it's really an opportunity to improve the conditions along the area and correct some of the existing problems that you have as redevelopment occurs over time. So there are a lot of benefits to that. We also recommended design criteria. We noticed in the comprehensive plan that a lot of people had concerns. They wanted to maintain this residential appearance to the buildings and things, and that's something that can be achievable. Again, it's another opportunity to provide what you want, and where you may not be able to do that if you didn't have these new regulations in place when they're developed. Some of the criteria that's includes requirements for traffic studies. So if it's a special permit use, they're going to have to demonstrate that there is an impact or that it's properly mitigated. It encourages shared access to limit the number of access points onto the road and shared parking, pedestrian accesses, and pedestrian enhancements. Also, typically with a site plan review, you're going to be required to have architectural review and historic preservation board review. So, maintaining that character is an important part of this, and a portion of the corridor study area actually is within a historic district, so there are opportunities to maintain, this particular character. Also, with a typical site plan special permit review, you're going to have a secret review. So you have to go through this environmental assessment for your project, and that's just another way of preventing certain issues or providing another method to mitigate issues. As Mr. Robinson said, there is recommendations to move the buildings more forward a few feet and larger setbacks in the rear to provide a greater setback from residential properties. There are also currently 50-foot transition yards that are in place, and the plan also recommends a little bit of flexibility with the side yards. And we feel that with these recommendations, we can help to create a more pedestrian feel for the area, even though it's not going to be the downtown, and we specifically designed it that way so that we would try to prevent any competition between the two areas. Also, this would allow some opportunities for some types of retail that are very unlikely to locate down into the Village Business District, such as mom and pop shops that we had this discussion last time about the rents in the downtown, and that they're very high, and it's it's very difficult to get established in some of those areas. And we also talked about some of the accessory retail uses to some of the shops. Also, Mr. Robinson touched on this a little bit too, is about one of the comments that the Gibbs group had was about freestanding buildings, wide setbacks, and with on-site parking, and that's what you have right now. This actually makes that a better condition by moving those buildings forward, and through the dimensional requirements of a future code amendment, we think that we can address those issues. Also, Gibbs stated that he felt that there was some residual office demand in the area that could help sustain the office district. He did his analysis in 2013, but when we did ours in 2014, we found something different. Basically, we did collect information from Cushman and Wakefield, which provides data for regional areas. And those data informed us that there are a lot of vacancies in offices, but it's not really particular to Southampton, and that was something that was brought up. So what we did was we interviewed some realtors from the area. And some of the information that they gave us, and I'll try to summarize, is that office demand was light. There is a need for retail inside and outside the Village Business District. Rents are high, and mom and pops can't afford it. Only national chains can afford locating downtown. And then some observations that we had made was, again, about this medical office, that it's a fine use to have, but if the hospital moves away, we believe that some of that draw to doctors' offices to the area may likely dissipate somewhat. And then just finally, I just wanted to touch on one of the recommendations of Gibbs. We spoke about this at length last time, but about the multifamily residential uses. It's a fine use if you had sewers, and it's just not going to happen if you don't have sewers. As I mentioned last time, you get 300 gallons of sewage per day, which is the equivalent for 40,000 square feet, which is the equivalent of one single-family home. And even if you did create multifamily residences, you also have the similar types of impacts that Gibbs raises, things like traffic and trash and noise and light. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's a brief summary, but I did submit those letters for your review.
Yeah, we got this today. Nobody on the board has really had a chance to read it and compare it to the Gibbs study and the comments around that. So, but Mike, I appreciate you coming out here tonight. And you guys have any questions for Mike in reference to this?
I just have a question. On here, we're talking about the setbacks. Did you recommend the setbacks of being 25 feet, or was that the Gibbs study?
That was us, from 35 to 25 to bring it forward.
And then, did you also recommend that slightly increase the maximum building footprint from 4,000 to 5,000 for single-story and 3,500 to 4,000 for two-story? Does that mean that a 3,500 square foot or 4,000 square foot two-story structure would really be 7,000 or 8,000 square feet if it has a second story?
The 45 would be 9,000, so you could have an apartment upstairs if you had the sewage in place, something like that. But usually with retail, we don't...
45, I see a 3,500 and a 4,000 square foot for two-story structures. So that would be 7,000 and 8,000.
Yes.
Okay. It's large.
Okay. Mike, did you...
No.
Yeah, we got a lot to read here, so, okay. So that being, Mr. Grieven? Judy will be next, and then Wayne. Okay.
The hour is late. I will be brief. My wife and I had the great pleasure of attending a session at the Hauppauge Planning Committee on this very subject. I was given 3 minutes. Mr. Robinson spoke for, I guess, half an hour. I do not want to challenge any of the statements or assumptions or proposals. What I would like to do is urge you 4 or 5 people to appoint an independent committee of citizens who are knowledgeable, who live here, who have businesses here, who practice not only law, got too damn many lawyers involved in this, but who practice other pursuits, businesses, and get their view and get them to work on this. And
we have that.
I realize that knowledgeable people can differ. Mr. Robinson, for example, thought that the Village Planning Commission had made a final decision on this. Baloney. Okay? Form a committee, put them to work, give them a couple of months, and see what comes out of that.
That's really the charge of the Village Planning Commission. What you just said.
Negative.
That's the...
They're too focused. They're too professional in what they're doing. You need people who do business here, people who earn a living here.
I don't know if you could be too professional on what you're doing, so...
I'm just suggesting a different route.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Judy?
Thank you very much. Judy Hadlock, 39 Toilsome Lane, Southampton, a business owner and member of the Chamber of Commerce for over 30 years. It is my opinion and that of many others I've spoken to in the business community that we do need an area for smaller businesses to operate with lower rents. That opportunity does not exist in our core village right now. What we're talking about is 11 to 13 parcels for possible development. Not a huge increase, but possibly a great niche increase to our business offerings to the community. There's a square foot maximum to each building, and I know that many of us share the midnight fear of big box stores. If it were possible to put a cap on the amount of square footage per building, even if 2 properties were combined, we might be able to put some teeth into that size restriction and the fear of any kind of a big box store. I think the continuation of some of our antique lights along this way would improve the flow of North Sea Road into the village, and it might give us an opportunity to make something prettier and better than what we have now. Change is always difficult, but with the ARB's teeth of possible mandatory landscape requirements and the maintenance thereof, we could have something even better than we have today. Thank you.
Wayne?
Good evening, board members. I know the evening's late. I'll try to be brief as well. Key word here is flexibility. I represent 3 landowners, one of which I have a partial interest in the corridor study. One of which the study actually included originally, but is not part of the recommended overlay district. That is the former Platt Law Office at 99 Sanford Place, which has been, as you know, the Platts are no longer practicing law. They sold the building. It's been on the market for at least a year and a half now for office use, and there's been no takers. The other property I represent is right on the corner of Bowden Square and North Sea Road. Currently, there's an application in front of the planning board to modify that building. My clients have looked at the zoning code. As you know, your office district is very limited. And as Mr. Bennett had told you at the last public hearing, if you go back to the 1970 master plan of the village, the office district was a placeholder. There was even recommendation that the village, and this is the same in the town, it was a transition zone between residential area and the commercial area, and they didn't know what to do with it. So they put a placeholder, and they actually recommended that the town and the village continue to look at that and examine that. Here we are, what is it, 70? I can't do the math. We're some number of years later, and we're finally getting to a point where you're studying that and trying to see how to make it work. The application on the corner of Bowdoin Square is for a bank. My clients want to use the property for its highest and best use. If you go to the limited uses, medical arts, there's no market for medical arts here. There's no market for office currently. There's no market for a funeral home. The only thing they can think of, the other permitted use aside from existing dwellings, public library, public museum, public park, or agriculture, which are the other permitted uses, is a bank. They have no bank in mind. They need to market it. As we all know, there was already a bank approved at the corner of Elm Street. There's no bank built there. There's a site plan approved for that. Mr. Farrell eventually found a bank and put that in what was a medical arts building. Who knows what the viability of that in the long term. But that is the application. What the code doesn't provide is flexibility. The office district doesn't do that. What I see is that this study, which is done by a reputable planning firm that this board hired, but it came first from a recommendation of your planning commission, which I believe your charge is correct. Why do we need another committee to do whatever? And certainly the public hearings that you've been holding, which you're not going to close tonight, and you're going to continue to hear from the public, is that purpose. But this study is more modern than some of these studies. I have a planning background. It used to be what we would call, I would consider this study more progressive. The evolution in planning was where planning and your zoning codes were what I would call prohibited. Basically tells you what you can't do on this property. That's the way all the codes are designed. It's all prohibited. The new evolution in planning is to take a step beyond that and now look at the opportunities that we're missing and look at incentives. What do we need done on this corridor? And some of the things were mentioned. Design elements, things that are not happening through your planning process now. What can you get, what can't you get through the planning process? You know, and through your zoning process, whether it be setbacks, whether it be landscaping, whether it be lights, whatever that process, it's not there, it's not working right now. We can do better. And so this study takes a step, tells you some of the things that we want to see. Maybe we can do a little better. Let's look at those aspects, find out what else do we want. But when you look at this is giving the landowners an incentive in exchange for something. We'll give you some additional uses. It's not carte blanche. Additional uses that are limited with serious study in exchange for certain design elements that have to be incorporated, mandated into the process, not one you sit and negotiate and argue months at a time with the ARB or the planning board, which is what currently happens, but it'll be mandated. And so when you look at these limited uses and you look at the standards, currently retail and office, when you look at parking standards, they're the same. We're not changing, we're not increasing the number of cars that will be on the property. The parking standards are the same, 1 per 180 square feet of gross floor area, whether it's office or retail. You look at sewage flow, they're basically the same. So what we're doing is giving incentives. It has a market aspect. Our mom and pops are not in the downtown. You're going to have better availability to rent. And these uses could be interchangeable. The other aspect is what we keep missing. We keep using the word retail, and I heard Nelson and Pope's consultant indicate it's business uses. One aspect, and Mark has heard this several times, I had a client that is up on the highway looking for service use, a dog groomer. She had several people come to her in the village. It's not permitted anywhere in the village. Service uses, believe it or not, are permitted in the village business zone. That particular service use is not. But the service uses, they're the uses that really you don't want. You want to get your into the facility and out of the facility. It isn't parking long term. You want that in a place out of the village downtown where you can get a parking spot. Try to go bring your clothes into the dry cleaners on Main Street. That's an example. This code allows service uses, which are not allowed right now in office district. So uses like that, it's just not broad retail. It's also limited in size, but the design elements. So I just want to leave you with, obviously I'm in support of this. I'm the 3 owners. It provides extra flexibility in what they have and what their options. As I mentioned, the corner of Bowden Square and North Sea Road, they have no other options. They're going to come in, they're going to have a bank, we're going to have another bank approved. And we're going to have traffic issues and everything else, but there's a better design for that. And my client will kill me if I'm telling him to do something else, but right now that's what he wants. He wants a bank. I own a building. I'm not going to be practicing law just like the Platts forever. There's going to be a time where that building, maybe a limited retail use could, or service use could occupy the space. That opportunity, without having to go to the zoning board every time, because I tried to rent it, I tried to sell it as an office use, it doesn't work. That's the conflict you're going to have. In the meantime, the entrance to the community remains as is. So all I'm thinking is, look at this carefully. I think it's a good step for the village and provides flexibility, and that's what our zoning code needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes.
I'm one of the 5 houses, and I'll sell mine to you for a parking lot.
State your name and address for everybody, for the record.
Sandy Arcara, I'm one of the 5 houses. And I said, if you want a parking lot, you can buy my property and put cars there. And otherwise, I think that when my property is cut in half of it's commercial, half of it's residential, something needs to be done to help me. And I'm only one of the 5 of the how many other places. So maybe we could find a solution. And you can always keep the front of my house, which is charming, if people want to call it charming. It can't stay charming because I can't do much with it. But if you keep the front of it, it could be charming and be something else useful behind it. A parking lot.
Anyone else would like to speak on this? Roger.
Hey, good evening.
Glad you didn't disappoint me.
Well, I've gotten a lot of emails on this subject over the past week, as you can imagine. And I've attended the meetings and listening to what people have to say and their concerns and so forth. And I think we have, Sandy and the neighbors very concerned about what's happening along that the residential areas, what backs onto them. And really these days, it's only when something new happens that the residential neighborhood gets protected from the commercial side of the block, if you will. Case in point is when the bank went in on the corner of Little Plains and Hampton Road. And we spent long hours on the ARB when I chaired it at that time to make sure that the neighborhood was protected. And you'll see there's a very thick, very tall, very vibrant wall of green. And everyone who lived on the other side of that was perfectly content when it was planted. Now it's grown in even more, and they still live there, and they're thrilled for the most part. But when you make small changes, that doesn't happen. And small changes, as Wayne pointed out, have many of the same requirements for septic, garbage pickup probably increases a little bit, and so on. So the noise continues. And living on Post Crossing, such as I do, Roger Blau, Post Crossing, forgot to tell you that, brings on many noises in the wee hours of the morning. 4:30, the dumpsters are being rattled for picking up the garbage and so forth, much earlier than it's supposed to by code, but it still happens, and we can't really manage that very well as residents. But I think one thing that Wayne mentioned was that the office district was put in as a placeholder. In a way, that was a way of keeping us from rushing too far, too fast. And I think if I would emphasize anything, given the concerns of everyone here, is that we maintain that kind of a view. Let's not rush too far, too fast. My own viewpoint is we have seemingly more commercial happening down on the other side of the railroad trestle than we have on this side. And maybe if we're going to do something in an expansive way, maybe we want to consider that. That protects the residential neighborhoods. And as you know, there's a lot of CPF, 7.4 acres of CPF land between the 7-Eleven and one block to the south, or to the east rather. So to the south, that's right. Need my Boy Scout compass. So there's, and Sandy, talking about selling lots and so on and so forth. Well, you know, you don't miss paradise until you put up a parking lot. And we don't want to look at more parking lots. Sell it to CPF. We'll make them an offer they can't refuse or something. But we have, you know, an aim going down there of creating community garden and making things more wonderful for our village. And that comes through the purchase of Community Preservation Fund and how we're able to coordinate with Rogers Memorial Library, such as we are in other institutions. So with that in mind, I'd say, you know, let's don't go too far, too fast.
All right, thanks. Anyone else would like to speak? Yes.
My name is Sarah Van Allen, and I live on the corner of North Main Street and Bowden Square. And I'm concerned because the area you're talking about abuts a historic district. And in terms of a placeholder, I'm very happy there's a placeholder, that there's a transition zone between the business and the residential area. I try to walk across Bowden Square to go to the post office, and the thought of having a bank with, obviously they'd have a drive-in window right at that corner as well, I think is rather problematic.
But a bank is authorized use in that zone right now. And that's one thing when Wayne was talking, that right now that's the best use for that property. And
instead, is it the White House that's sort of set back across from
That's the only
the
one.
Union? That's the only spot, right? So it's kitty corner from another bank.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated that they think that a bank wants to go there, but not on the corner of Elm Street and Hampton Road. So, but that's not the, yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Okay, that's a whole nother thing,
Yeah.
but okay. But I do this concept, well, there'll be mom and pop shops along there. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, there's no mom and pop shop's gonna go on. It's my perception. Mom and pop shops can't even survive in the most vibrant areas. And this comment that for 3 months a year, a certain population gets to use the village, but the residents that live here, don't they want to be out on North Sea Road? Really sort of hits me the wrong way. I want to be part of the vibrant community that's our wonderful village, and I like to park in front of Herrick's, and I like to do all those things, and I want to go do my shopping there. I don't want to be sent out towards the highway just because I live here all year round. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
My name is Mary Beth Welsh. I live at 295 North Main. 3 of the people on this board are my neighbors. You know what the problems are. You know what North Sea Road is like. To discuss, I know when I say traffic, everybody goes poo-poo. Well, if you live on North Main Street and you happen to want to go someplace, the traffic is incredible on North Sea Road. But I leave it to you. You know more. You live there. And the only other thing is what this lady just said. Retail is dead. I mean, read the newspapers. And if you think little mom and pop stores are going to be in conflict with Amazon.Prime, you're crazy. And we're going to wind up with a bunch of empty stores. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak?
What happens to us? 5 of us.
That's why we're having this discussion, so.
Take care of the 5 of us and the rest will fall.
That's why we're having a public hearing around this stuff. So, I mean, it's, anyone else from the public would like to speak? Okay, so what we have is, there's copies of the Nelson Pope study commentary that was submitted to the board. It's up here. I haven't had a chance to read it. I'd encourage you to pick it up. Greg, come on. Come on up.
I can't let this go.
Okay.
Greg Delia, summer resident. I've listened to everybody come up here who's in favor of this, and they argue traffic, this, that, and the other thing, and they dismiss one aspect of it. Do we think that a mom and pop shoe repair store that might go there, sounds like a great idea, can't afford to be on Main Street or Job's Lane, but could afford possibly to be in this area, what makes you think that someone is going to be able to park there and actually go in to give their shoes to be repaired? Be nice to have that here. Part of what Judy Hadlock just said is absolutely accurate. It would be lovely. I just drove there because while the whole thing with the Pond Lane was going on, I went and got gas and came back. I drove the whole strip and I looked at it. And then Bo says something about 11 pieces of property. Well, what if everyone on the strip decides, okay, we can all be retail now, because that's what this conforms to. So now everybody wants to be retail. And the whole thing lays vacant because nobody is going to be able to do anything. I don't disagree with what Judy Hadlock just said. I completely agree with the idea of making it look nice, the idea of having nice shops in there. I think that's a great idea. It's not realistic. It's not going to happen. We all talk about this dog grooming thing. It's an exception needs to be made. I agree. The woman has a great shop.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to have it. There are other options. There are other things to explore. And yes, that would be a great thing to have, slightly outside the main drag of Job's Lane and Main Street. But what makes you think that a shoe repair or some kind of local, I love it. I agree with that woman who said local store. How rude is that? Herrick's is a local store. We're all local stores. What, are the 3-month residents? And I'm one of them, all right? I am only here for the summers. Are we better than the other people who are here 12 months of the year? That's absurd. And that's absurd talk to look at this property and this strip of land. It's everyone's use. And the reality is, yesterday I drove into the post office and I was the last car to get in for 4 minutes before I could get to a parking space because it was so crowded. So you're going to put little retail stores, they're not going to be able to get customers to go there.
Here's the difference between the post office and every other opportunity on there. The post office was a federally designed building.
Disaster.
A federally designed parking lot based on annual numbers, not what, and that's the whole difference. That never had to go through our entire planning process in the village.
I understand that.
So
but what happens, so let's say you do this whole thing.
Okay.
And you keep talking about 11 parcels. Can everybody on there, if you do this, rezone this, everybody could be retail, am I correct?
Well, not every parcel in there could be turned into.
I believe both said 40 some odd parcels, is that correct?
Well, let's think in terms of what the parcels are. So
I'm just saying, approximately 40-something parcels were discussed. So if every house sold and everybody wanted, they could all be retail based on this, is that correct? Understood. But the reality is, if you rezone it, it might now become more advantageous to turn it to retail.
Well, how many retail spots do you already have there?
Well, you've got Schmidt's, you've got the Clam Man, you've got Peconic Meats,
Lynch's Garden Center.
You've got Old.
So you already have properties, the 44, that are already pre-existing
Okay.
So
let's
that
take
drops
those-
that number down, okay?
All right, so let's say there's 30 left.
And then you have properties there that are utilities, the LIPA property.
Okay.
Okay, you've got properties that were purchased with Community Preservation Fund monies, okay,
But
and
the
you-
bank that's there right now, that Farrell put in, that could all become retail if they so chose, right?
It's not an as of right. It's not an as of right to change that use. That's what the great part of this is, a
So
special
it's only
permit
these,
process.
quote, 11 parcels that...
It's like, look, every single property in that area is subject to the same. So on the zoning map there, it would say that this would be a special permit, and it would list the different uses under special permit. And that special permit, someone would have to come to the Village Board of Trustees and apply for a special permit. And that means they still have to go through all the other...
So you can have a good handle
The Village Board would have a handle on how each piece would be developed, okay? And so there's really limited opportunities.
And when they are developed, and someone comes in for a year, and that little cute mom and pop doesn't work, and then it lays vacant, and now the next 2 or 3 are being developed, you wind up with this strip of property, which doesn't look great right now. I don't disagree with it, but what are you going to do?
Somebody's going to buy a piece of property.
And the gentleman got up and said that the medical thing moved away. They moved out to a bigger space on the highway, all right, next to Hubble. It's not that there isn't a need for medical, because the other argument that, if the hospital moves, it's still needed.
Right.
So, everybody comes up here and wants to make this fit a little pattern.
Well, that's why we go through this process here. That's why we get the studies and stuff.
Well, it seems like it's a foregone conclusion.
No, it's not.
Okay.
But
We have difference in opinion up at this board here. Not everybody agrees and supports this, and not everybody doesn't support it, and it's, so.
I have my concerns too, and my concerns are redevelopment is very expensive. Development is expensive. The cost of the property is expensive. To build a new structure now, a commercial structure, it's not like the old days where you just throw up a wooden frame. It's all steel. It all has to be fireproof.
Right.
It's extremely expensive. And so what happens with that? What happens with that is they have to charge a rent, maybe even more than Main Street, maybe even more than Job's Lane. I have concern over that.
I'm glad you say it.
And because I don't see the mom and pop getting the break. The only way I see a mom and pop ever getting a break is if we put sewage treatment in this community and we reduce the square footage from 800 and allow for some smaller shops within the community.
All right, but that brings up a whole other thing.
But if you travel all throughout Europe, you find these wonderful little tiny shops where we would have more of a variety. Right now, we don't have a lot of variety. Our minimum square footage is 800 square feet, 1 bathroom. That's an issue that we have in our community. The only way I could ever see this ever working, whether it's there or in the village itself, is to have a smaller square footage, and the only way we're ever going to be able to do that is through sewage treatment. But I do have...
There are people that have said, this is interesting, they want to do this. Well, we can't really do what we want to do to make it work. Now this brings back the whole, the sewer thing becomes it's like a real end run back to the sewer.
Well, it's not an end run to the sewer. Even people who are opposed to this have talked about increasing the residential opportunities on this area.
That the last meeting.
And you can't, and basically on a 1 acre, you're going to get a single family house. So if you're trying to get multifamily in this area, it goes back to sewage treatment. We got to figure out how we're managing our waste in this village, and until that happens right there, you'll see empty spaces. You won't see any new restaurants. You won't see any more wet uses. The housing opportunities that we talk about, you want to reduce the volume of traffic out here. You do affordable housing opportunities. Where do you do affordable housing opportunities? You do them above retail spaces, okay? You can't do that unless there's waste treatment.
Well, you couldn't do affordable, we've had this discussion, even if you were able to build a retail store on the base, on the first floor and do rental above it, even if you had the sewer treatment, it still wouldn't be affordable rental. I mean, it's too expensive.
Unless you made it as part of the component, you would make it as part of the component. You'll get this if you do this.
If you use square footage requirements, so you can get more apartments in an area right there.
I understand.
So, I mean, that's those.
You guys have all dealt with this a lot longer. I just envision making that turn off the highway down into town and just seeing a slew of empty stores.
I don't think anybody sitting on this board, and I don't think anybody sitting in the audience here, or anybody that lives in this village, wants to see empty space.
Okay.
And that's the reality. I mean, it bothers me if I see an empty store on Main Street in Job's Lane. We had a couple of them this year going into the season.
Right. It was, as I said the last time, it took till August.
The corner of Windmill Lane and Hill Street, that whole white building right there is, I cringe every time I walk by it, because I know part of the issue around the redevelopment of that property is sewage. We have the old the auto repair place that's on Pond Lane and Hill Street right there that just went up for sale. And people were drooling on it. People were like, oh, what a great place for a restaurant. That's fantastic. Where are you going to do it? You don't have any sewage. So what you have is dry space that is limited opportunities around here. So it's just, I mean, look,
Thank you for the opportunity.
yeah, no, great. I'm always good to see you.
Not for much longer.
Mrs. Grieving, yes.
Apropos the comments about people don't want change because they rather just sit and look at the old things and nothing new happens. I think it's wonderful to have change if it's done with taste and if it's done with forethought. Because the thing that frightens me is the business of making the new study is that one person will change something, and then the next thing you know, there'll be another McDonald's, even if you get the sewer treatment plant, and it's going to look like, I don't know, New Hope, Pennsylvania, rather than East Hampton or Southampton. So what is East Hampton doing about these problems? They seem to have a better organization. I don't know. They have a beautiful entry. People come into East Hampton, and it's beautiful. And the stores are filled, and it's, what's happening there?
Go out there in about a month.
Oh, I know, but it's still better occupied than Southampton.
I don't like it as much as I like our village because it's a main road going through their village.
Yeah,
it's a highway that goes through their village. We don't have a highway going through our village. We have a beautiful main street, small, narrow main street in Job's Lane. Nobody could even compare to it as far as I'm concerned. East Hampton has all of these big stores that are there that all closed down. I mean, we don't.
But you're going to have that when you come from County Road 39. If you continue, you're going to be building stuff up there.
The other thing that East Hampton has right there is a movie theater.
Yeah.
So they have a destination piece that drives people. It's an economic
And look at our movie theater.
Let me tell you something. That isn't working for them anymore. Because all those stores that went in, all those big stores and all the mom and pops went out over there too, because all the corporates came in. They're closing down at 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Before, when the mom and pops were there, they were open late at night. It was vibrant. It isn't anymore.
Well, how do we get the mom and pops back and offer them a decent rental fee and still have it done with taste, have it nice?
There are some landlords in our village that really promote that, and they give a halfway decent rent. And then there are some that don't care, and they are very greedy, and they bought their buildings years ago, and they know what the going rate is, and they want it, or they want more. So
better wake up and smell the coffee, as they say.
And they don't care.
They're going to be empty for a while.
The next person will come in, and they don't care if they rotate every year and we get a new vendor in there every year. They don't care. We care.
They live here.
It's true.
They
That's
all live
right.
in Florida.
Yeah, or elsewhere.
Mark and Larry just lost Daly's here. And the owners do not live anywhere near here. So what do they care?
Thank you.
No, it's true.
Thank you.
It's private ownership. I mean, can't pick and choose who owns the buildings.
It's the,
I just
Judy.
want to say thank you to the board and to
Just sitting here, I think we have to say thank you. We have to say thank you to the board and to each other, because there aren't many places where you can get up and say what you want to say on a controversial issue and then go with your friends to dinner and respect each other's opinion. And that's very prevalent here tonight. Thank you.
We have the police. Save us.
You get a word from
We're going to dinner.
So where are we going to dinner, guys?
My house up on the hill.
Okay, all right. It's got a great parking lot in the back, right? No, we're going to the Grievance House. They're having hot dogs for us. There you go.
All you'll see is our dog locked in
Okay. Anyone else would like to have make comment about this? Okay, so we're going to keep this public hearing open. We've got a lot of material that we have to read through here as a board. I encourage people to pick a copy of the plan. Also pick a copy of this Pierce Concert Homestead plan. Alex, I don't know if you wanted to do it.
I just want to respond to the
Okay, just come on up and just... Okay.
But there seemed to be a notion, the last fellow that was here, it seemed to be a notion that there's going to be a demand to put retail. And I think you have to go back to Mr. Braun's statement. It allows the flexibility, which addresses everybody's opinion here. Give you the flexibility to do other things. It's not a demand that retail be put in. So.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Alex. Okay. All right. Anyone else? So we're going to keep the public hearing open. I encourage you guys to pick up both of these pieces right here and okay.
Oh, no, come back at any time.
Anytime.
We want you back.
I have one more taker here, Mark.
Mark. Oh, there's somebody else?
So you wanted to say, okay.
Hold on,
Sorry,
everyone.
1 second. We got one other comment. 1 second, yep.
This is the best guy here.
I sincerely apologize for, extending the hearing, and I'll be very brief. Number one, thank you for the forum. It's great to have the opportunity, as someone just said, Dan Galizio with Peconic Baykeeper. So it's great to have the forum so people can exchange ideas and talk about these issues. As they say, there's no such thing as a simple land use issue. But just a couple quick points. In terms of this proposal, it would be great if in a future forum some of these issues in terms of data could be summarized, such as the total number of, I know we've talked about the total number of properties, but even though we're trying to whittle that number down to the 11 or so properties that haven't been developed for, say, retail or some other use, those non-conforming 26 parcels could also then become legalized as a part of this proposal and have access to a greater variety of uses than they currently do. So we should know about those numbers as well. And it'd be great just to add up some of the data points, such as the total amount that trips or traffic could be generated if all of these uses were converted to retail. How much of an increase is potentially available in terms of sanitary flow? You mentioned the idea of waste management. It's a critical issue. The whole purpose of zoning is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. While we want to help people maximize the value and the return of their investment, as a fundamental right, zoning has to protect health, safety, and welfare first. So looking at things like nutrient loading and toxin loading tied to changes such as are proposed here, I think are great issues to summarize, present to the public, either on the website or as a handout. That's all I have to say, and thank you again for the opportunity to just make a couple comments.
Mary? Yeah.
Hi, Mary Lynn, Oldtown Road. I think the meeting yesterday, Suffolk County Planning Commission, seemed to be a surprise to a lot of people. And then we heard that Nelson Pope report had gone to them in July.
Well, the Nelson Pope report was actually dated the 6th and given to us today. So I don't know how the county could have gotten a report that didn't. Maybe that's what they're responding to.
But Mary, I'm as surprised as anyone.
No, it seems odd. I mean, I don't know, how did it get to Suffolk County? I'm sorry.
Well, it's referred from us. It's one of the things that
So
we...
someone office of the village?
Well, it's part of the public hearing process, is that we can't act on anything until we get feedback from Suffolk County Planning Commission.
Right,
So,
but I think the surprise came that the commission, Suffolk County, took a look at a report that seemed to be the only one going on out there because it was, commissioned by the village. I don't think that people felt they had enough information in advance that this was going on.
well, we would say that the report the county had, the County Planning Commission, is the study, the corridor study that you guys completed a long time ago. It's the basis for the public hearing here.
Right.
So that's what they had. It was 170-something pages, something like that.
So that
right?
was given to Suffolk County in April by the village or by Nelson Pope?
Part of this public hearing process.
Right.
I mean, we can't do anything. We can't make a master plan update. We can't do a zoning change unless we send it off to the Suffolk County Planning
We being
Commission.
the village?
The village.
Okay.
The village. So we have to send it to them and get their feedback. So sometimes they may just defer this and turn it back as a local zoning issue. Sometimes they're going to have commentary around some of the pieces. Sometimes, it doesn't impact other adjacent municipalities. That's the idea behind the whole thing. But we can't take any action until the Suffolk County Planning Commission provides some type of input. I know they met yesterday. I'm in the middle of a massive, inspection right now at the work, so I wasn't able to go. I didn't hear anything about it.
So no one from the village officers?
Steve could explain that best because I asked the same question about that process.
It was, first of all, they had a meeting on August 25th. I don't know what transpired there. Suffolk County.
Right.
They mailed a letter to me dated August 25th. It was postmarked August 26th, and I received it August 28th, obviously 3 days after the meeting. And then I received an email late or early Friday morning about this meeting on the 7th and wanted to know if anybody from the village was going to...
So you got a notice Friday about the...
Email Friday morning about a Tuesday meeting. Wow. Yeah, so I circulated, but it obviously was last minute. Bo was able to attend, Paul Travis was unable, the board members unable, but 3 days prior, and with Labor Day in between.
I don't know how you control that, but it was just curious about how it all came to be. Okay, thank you.
It's part of the process. We can't take any action one way or the other without that. So, okay. Any other questions? Anybody want to jump up at the last minute before we all go to the grievance house for hot dogs? Okay. All right.
I can tell you about that Suffolk County Commission hearing if you want to learn anything about it.
Okay.
Come up.
Yeah, come on up.
They didn't have the gift report, they didn't know a thing about it. We only had the one report, so we didn't have all the information for them.
Come up.
Okay.
There was some confusion, which I think should be cleared up for the future. The ground rules for the commission require a certain, let's say, imprimatur from officialdom of all the various towns and villages. With respect to Southampton Village, there was a question. I don't want to go into all the details, but for the future, you want to make sure that you cross the T's and dot the I's.
I don't know what that means.
Okay.
Did you come back?
Thanks for the,
That's vague. I don't know.
Let's put Rich in charge of that.
Okay.
Does that mean that?
So we...
I don't know.
We've lost all absolute control over this. So we have a public hearing. The public hearing is going to stay open here. It's going to give us opportunity to read this, talk to the Suffolk County Planning Commission and figure out what dotting the I's and crossing the T's are all about. And, okay. Anything else? Okay. All right, good. Okay. Thanks, guys.
You can all stay for the rest of the
Yeah.
meeting if you'd like.
Okay.
is the really dull part.
Many pages here.
Take care, Audrey.
See you too.
Judy and I are going to dinner in fact.
All right, good.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Yeah, that's about the consultants, right? Yeah, you should stay for that, sure.
I wonder if John's coming back.
Okay.
This is.
Yeah, it is.
Who's a municipality? The real one?
Sure. It's public.
I mean, they have to be embarrassed if they
No,
can't.
they should, yeah.
No, but if we can't, if we pass that law that they get fined. Anyone who does not have a covered and leaves their garbage like this gets fined, and I forget how much it was.
I'm going to send these pictures to the president of the MTA.
For the future.
Okay,
thank you.
I mean, if they lock it and then only the people who work there can go in and put their garbage in there, this is the entire community. They get on the train and they throw their garbage in there.
No. Okay.
We have one communication board, this Coalition for Women's Cancers. Once again, the Coalition for Women's Cancers would like to hang pink bows on the trees in the village during the month of October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. As always, we promise to keep an eye on the ribbons. If they look bad, we'll replace them and they will be taken down on November 1st. Please let me know if this is a go as soon as possible. It takes me a while to make the bows. Thanks again for your continued support. Be well, Susie Barry Roden, President.
So, like, it's always a nice thing. So I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Coalition for Women's Cancers to hang the pink ribbon and bows around the trees in accordance with their letter dated September 1st, 2016.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolutions, item 1, resolved that the reading of the minutes of the public session of August 23rd be dispensed with, that those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator. The actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved. Have a motion?
I make that motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 2, resolved that the claims for the warrants dated September 8th, 2016, totaling $174,773.48, warrant 6 general fund, and $8,844, warrant 4 capital reserve fund, and the village payrolls for the period from August 19th, 2016 to September 1st, 2016 be ordered and approved. Have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second?
Discussion. Page 1, Absolute Shine Auto Spa, the details on the ambulance, first responders, and ambulance. 7 vehicles in total, $2,350. Air and Gas Technology, service contract for the airfill system for the fire department, $2,365.75. Armchair Wholesale, ammunition for the police, $1,831.50. Black Bear Lubricants, bulk oil for the garage, $1,384.35. CSEA Employment Benefit Fund, September insurance premium, $26,055. Capital Brothers Garbage Truck Repair, $7,306.28. Page 2, Cleary Consulting, consulting for the Planning Board, $1,275. Eastern Property Services, repainting the Agawam Fountain, $5,800. Finance Manager, annual maintenance fee for the accounting system, $8,312. Fluid Imagery, going on to page 3. Computer Services for PD, $3,159.99. Golden Montello, 2,000 gallons of diesel fuel, $2,751.95. Page 4, Herrick Hardware, flowing on to page 6. August Supplies, $1,767.89. Page 7, Island Tech Services, 3 laptops and software package for the ambulance, $17,005.50. Page 9, going on to page 10, Morgan Auto Supplies, supplies for the garage, $2,730.70. Page 11, carting for August, $1,333, and carting and porta potties for the highway department, $6,095. For Mercer. Page 12, Office of State Controller, fines for the court for July, $11,662.50. Page 13, Professional State Care, cutting the Aldridge Lane lot for the summertime, $4,050. PSE&G, Electric Services for 25 Village Lane, $5,320.30. And Traffic Lights, $1,219.49. Page 14, PSE&G for buildings, $5,515.07. Page 15, Riverhead Building Supply, August supplies, $1,710.87. RS Sales, bath and cleaning supplies, $1,326.20. Page 17, Sprague Operating Reserve, 3,000, 3 gallons of gasoline, $4,599.69. Suffolk County Water Authority, water bill for the parks, $2,143.30. Page 18, University of Rochester, supplies and training for the new EpiPens for the ambulance, $1,040. Vehicle tracking solutions, GPS for August, $1,079.55. And page 20, Whitmer Associates, ambulance clothing, $5,144. Capital Reserve warrant, payment to Motorola Solutions for Fire Department pages, $8,844. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Item 3, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the hiring of Glenn Kitron as a grasshopper for the Parks Department at an hourly rate of $10. Got the motion?
Motion.
Second. Glenn was hired as a bathroom cleaner for the Cooper's Beach situation, which worked out very well, and Larry is short of grasshoppers, so he's taking them on board. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves Matthew Zukoski as probationary member of Agro Imposed Company effective September 8th, 2016. Got the motion?
Make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Last one, resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the following payment from the Capital Reserve Fund pending permissive referendum, Motor Solutions, $8,844 from the Fire Equipment Reserve. Have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, discussion items. Do you want to jump to 328, Jen?
Yeah, let's do that. We'll do that.
All right, at the last meeting, there was a recommendation to hire a consultant for these two applications. And in your package there's a letter from Bo supporting that, and also a letter from John Bennett saying that, feeling that it's not necessary.
Excuse me.
So you appear to be maybe struggling with this, but I can only assure you that the board does not consider such a request to the trustees as slight, and I can't think of any request in the last 6 or 7 or 8 years for funding, but these are significant properties. The one on Hill Street may not be so much financially significant as the one on Gin Lane, but it's important to the people involved, and the board wants to make the best decision it can with the best information it can get.
Okay.
I think the one on Hill Street is wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. I think it's wonderful, that property. We've been looking at it forever, and it looks so old and wonderful.
Well, both of those properties are pretty spectacular properties.
Well, I mean, the one on Hill Street's a very limited opportunity
It's
right
true.
there. So it's, I mean, that's when you get into, how do you take that property right there and sell it on the market right there, and what happens to it? So,
well, I'll tell you, actually, Mark, I can answer that. The code has a provision that if the board, the historic board, declines an application for demolition, that there is an appeal process based upon financial hardship to the board itself, and that part of that is that requirement of code that the applicant negotiate or discuss the issues with the board. So it's not a knife type cleaver thing that comes down to stop things and forces somebody into a civil Article 78 procedure, but there is some leeway involved, and we have encouraged that in the past, but those efforts so far haven't come to fruition.
yeah, I know that, I mean, the Hill Street property is really, there's a significant burden, financial hardship on the owners of that property and their situation and stuff. So, and I do know it's complicated, their ability to sell the property.
Right.
But
what the board would like to do is know that whatever decision it makes on the property, is sustainable and fair.
Right.
And the same thing with the Poster property. I mean, that, there are a number of ways that could be resolved, but, declination of the the demolition permit is a substantial amount of money to the owner.
Right. So with the, so what kind of time frame are we talking about with these reports? Do we know?
Well, we've lost probably 6 weeks already, maybe 8, because I think the matter was adjourned in the ARB to, in the second meeting in July to do this, and it took a couple weeks to get somebody in line to do it. I would presume we're talking for this particular individual get themselves together, it's going to have to coincide with the meetings of the board. So I would say probably if the board approved it tonight, and I can communicate that to Mr. Snodgrass, we're probably talking about the second meeting in October for him to report. And then the applicants will want an opportunity to reply, I'm sure.
Comments from the board here?
I mean, I think what my goal would be to say to this man to be ready for the second meeting in October. Excuse me, the first meeting in October.
Well, I mean, if I could just throw out a couple of comments, I don't know if they have any value at all. I mean, their request is not really an unusual request because obviously we've heard from third party.
I would think it's not unusual at all. I would think it's infrequent.
It's infrequent,
I wouldn't think,
not unusual.
I wouldn't think the progression here is unusual given the stakes or the concerns.
I don't think it's a burden by any stretch of the imagination to the village of Southampton financially. When I looked at both applications, certainly both of them have tremendous historical significance. The Hill Street application is different than the Posner application. It's not dealing with necessarily two structures there that have been altered over the years, but it is a perfect example of our rural background in the village of Southampton.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I pulled the file, I was absolutely amazed the number of commercial entities that were on that Hill Street at that time. And many of those families are still in the village of Southampton, which is significant. And the Posner property, without a doubt, that structure, although I think it wasn't the original structure.
It's the accessory structure.
Right, to the house.
It wasn't the main house, I'm told.
It's a pretty spectacular building. You know,
well, as you know, the ARB can do no right. If they decline an application, they get sued by the owner. If they grant it, they get sued by the neighbor. So.
Well, I know. You know, so it's a tough call because you want an equal and balanced application on both.
Yeah,
both of them.
And that's what I said about Mr. Bennett's comments. I mean, he's sort of arguing his case in front of the board, the trustees, which is not the case. But he may disserve the clients because this consultant isn't being told to come to some conclusion. They're just being asked to investigate this themselves and draw their own conclusions. So it may actually benefit the owner, not in a manner that might be readily apparent today, but ultimately before this is decided or runs its course.
Right.
The same thing happened with the Old Town subdivision. You remember years ago, I think the day after the first meeting at the planning board, the owner came into Mark and wanted me fired. And by the time the application was over, I was his best friend. Because it saved him from a potential, Article 78 challenge on the historic proximity and a Type 1 action.
Right. And I think that turned out pretty well.
In this poster house, isn't it up against the dunes or close to the dunes?
As I understand it, it's inside the coastal erosion line. You couldn't duplicate that with a house today. And, I think there's only a handful that are done in that, I don't know what you would call it, but an Art Deco style.
Yes, very unusual.
Unusual house. The impressive thing with that house, quite frankly, is it's nestled in the dunes, and it's a it's a balanced reflection of the environment there, because it starts out with sort of a pebbly sand-style finish on the top, and then on the top there's some pretty spectacular panels.
Let's say it is absolutely spectacular, but it's not visible to anybody other than maybe the next-door neighbor. And isn't it the historic nature of the house that would be the reason to not allow them to tear it down? And if something isn't visible, does that, I always felt badly that we allowed the Audrey Lake house to get torn down.
Well, it is
highly
visible it's visible from the beach.
The dunes don't obscure it?
Not the top half of the house, which is all different colored tiles and a very unique center chimney. I mean, I'm not an architect by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a unique...
The code says that if it's not visible from a public right-of-way, the board has no jurisdiction. But this is visible from a public right-of-way.
Is the beach a public
Yes.
right-of-way?
Yeah, the easement with the Dongan pad. As we fight over the beach access.
Can you drive a truck
We'll give
there,
it
or
to
do you have
them
to
if they'll
walk?
let us park beach buggies in front of that house.
Can you drive a car there, or do you have to walk?
Yeah, that's right. It depends. So, okay. What are your thoughts here?
I think we should make a motion to accept the request for third-party review, based on the fact that both of those applications have historical significance that affects the residents of the village of Southampton.
Who was second on that?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
So
Thanks for putting this ahead of your schedule.
all right. Thanks. We got the HVC fall tours.
Yeah, this is the proposal by Kevin Lonnie. Last time, but I did clarify a couple of things. He's going to look at the November 12th and the December 3rd, using it at both the high school and the parish respectively. As far as the November 27th, I think the question is that where is the 2.5 hours of free time? So the way it works is that the jitney would pick up people from New York City, come out to the Omni, pick up more people there, they do their tour, and they will come back into the village around 5 o'clock and spend 2 hours in the village, hopefully restaurants, walking around, and then bring the people back to the Omni, and then take them, their cars will be parked at the Omni.
I actually don't know why they even need a village board approval on this.
Well, I think they just wanted using the parking lot.
How do we get it on them?
Yeah, I mean, it's, they do it all, people do it all, yeah, people do it all the time.
Well, we have it, I don't know what picks up over here by 25 Jobs, but, I think it's once a month I come in and
Yeah,
there's
the
a whole
jitney
load of
does that,
cars.
where they take people into the city for plays, and I know that did, like, the library, or did Friends of the Library organize some stuff there, and, a bunch of different things, so, I mean, it's no different than tour groups that are dropping off or anything like that, so, yeah, that's why I was just wondering why they even wanted a village board approval on this.
I think he was just trying to get the printing done, he just didn't want to have, go forward with, especially with the HVC that he's trying to promote with the village and everything else. So.
Okay. That's a whole other discussion, right? So,
all right, so I'll tell him that,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we need to, yeah, I mean, well, do you want to make a resolution to support this bill, or?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
I'll second it. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, there we go. All right.
Next one is I had this woman come to me, she lives on Wickapog, on the second page of this request, she's looking to, and don't shoot me, I got to present this to this community, but looking to purchase Village of Own property to the left of her. It's along the nature preserve for Wickapog. You'll see on the survey there, our piece, you'll see the green is her piece, and her Mark's looking at me like he's going to kill me.
I would say that as someone whose daughter goes out with a Fowler, and that park is named after Dick Fowler, I would respectfully say no to her request to purchase this property. But I don't know how anybody else feels about that. I don't think anyone else is supportive of it.
So why would we have a park that you can go down to Wickapog Pond that the public can use and enjoy? Why would we sell it to somebody so that the public can't go and enjoy it?
And there's encroachments on that park, too. That's
Totally
even her pictures show encroachments on that park.
It's actually a pretty nice walk down through.
It's a fantastic walk.
A lot of grapes down there.
Yeah, don't shoot the
After a
messenger.
half-hour presentation in my audience, I said,
sure.
I'll ask. That's all I can do is ask. All right, the next one is a request from Bill McCoy, just to follow up. He has spoken to me about this. St. John's Episcopal Church elected a fundraiser for Louisiana flood relief. It would consist of having a table in front of Village Hall on Saturday, September 10th, from approximately 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., selling homemade gumbo, soup, and beverages, and also have a jar for donations. All monies earned will go to the churches in our Louisiana diocese for outreach for those affected by the recent flooding. About 9/11 Sunday collections will also go to the flood cause, even though he doesn't say Sunday 9/11 in here.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, we need a motion on this. So.
I'll make a motion that we approve this request.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Football game, huh?
Yeah. Bill's looking at the time here. We're missing the first quarter.
That football game. Second family. Whatever you did for the least of my brethren.
I just wanted to run through the beach revenue real quickly for the year. Obviously, we got really hurt on Labor Days. We had a closed Sunday and Monday. This year we did 10,005 versus 44,000 last Labor Day. So overall, we're down about 78,000 for the season. We're still above budget for about 70,000. But the one thing I just want to point out is summer visitor permits are down about 90 permits this year. However, our resident permits are about 110. Which, yeah, it's just supporting, I don't know how you see it, but I talked to Roger Blau about this, and, it's a lot more people that I guess rented out here have purchased, second homes and such with their, sometimes
Well,
third
they're
homes.
not resident. You mean they're resident? They got
Well, the resident, if they're a resident permit, the numbers don't show it because we don't sell those permits, but the numbers issued of resident permits went from 5,039 to 5,143 this year. So I think that kind of gives some kind of credence of why some are visitor permits. I still don't figure out why non-resident and non-resident seniors are down, but, it's just a little interesting twist there. But anyway, just something.
People may realize that they could park in the parking lots and jump on one of those little vehicles and go for free.
Not that many go on that little
yes,
vehicle,
they do.
believe me.
Oh, no, they do. Because I asked that at the beach, and there's a lot of them that use that. So,
Well, how many buses went into Cooper's this year?
there's another thing.
Good question.
That would be an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah.
Because that's where you'd get your drop in the permits.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Good midnight reading.
Okay.
That's it.
Comments from board members here. Yaz is not here. Michael?
Oh. I really don't have anything to say, I got to.
Okay. Nance?
You know what, I think we said a lot tonight. I think the North Sea corridor is interesting. I can understand their points. I'm concerned about our downtown village area, and I have been for a long time, and now I'm even more concerned. They talk about the parking. How many years did Moon Veridian bring up the elevated parking? And you know what? If this community becomes developed the way they're talking about it, let's say Nugent Street and Windmill Lane, I don't know where the parking spots are going to come from.
We need to look at that.
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. Eventually people are going to hate that, but you go to other resort areas that are beautiful, and they have them, and you don't even know they're there because they plant the walls, so it looks like these beautiful walls of foliage. So you don't even know that they're there. I'm not saying that we need that right now. We don't need that right now. But, I am concerned. I think, we talked about offices, we changed the law that offices can't go on Main Street or Jobs Lane. And, there was one that kind of snuck in, and I think that was a good move on our part because, as I said, retail can't go into office, but office seems to be able to go into retail. And it's really affected our community, and we need a variety of stores. And, the mom and pops could still be around if we had smaller square footage, which is what I mentioned before. One of the most successful shops, it's seasonal obviously, on Jobs Lane, is that little bathing suit store when you're walking into, the area that has the fountain in it. There's a little bathing suit store that's on the right-hand side. It's always been there, and it probably is no more than 400 square feet. And every year they come and they open that. Yeah. And it comes back every year because they'll pay more per square foot for the smaller square footage, but the overall will cost them less because it's smaller square footage. I'm hoping that if we do get sewage treatment, we can look into this, because I would really like to see more stores, even if they're smaller. It gives someone an opportunity to get into retail, and if they do really well, they can expand. So, it's my hope for this community that we'll be able to do it, and it's another reason why we need sewage treatment. So,
Nancy, it's all about the cost per square foot.
It is. Well, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah,
cost per square foot.
you can make the smallest store you want, and if you can't cover that square foot, you aren't going to make it.
Yeah.
So it's all about rent structure.
Well, that's why I'm saying.
I'll testify to that.
Yes, I will. But also,
sure you will.
you're in one of the, your landlord is wonderful, because I've been told.
You think so, huh?
Well, I've been told that they want to keep the local stores in there, so that's what I've been told. So I don't know if that's actually going on or it's not going on anymore. I have no idea, but that's what I was told. But then you get people who have owned their buildings for a really long time, and they're just going for what they feel is the going rate, and they don't care if you make it or not. If you go out, I have somebody who'll take over for you. It's not a good attitude. So, but anyway, I do feel, if you had $100 a square foot, and, you had an 800 square foot property, what is that, 80,000?
It's a lot of bikinis.
Yeah, but if you have a 400 square foot, it's 40,000, it's half the cost. It gives a person an opportunity. So, it's a thought.
Bill?
Just want to go see what the Donald has said since I've...
That's why you're jumping. Finally, I just wanted to thank this board for all the support for the Southampton Arts Center. This summer was a fantastic summer season for the Arts Center, and and Julie did a phenomenal job there. Yes, and really, volume of activity on that site has increased dramatically, especially this year compared to last year. And the public is realizing that's community space. They're using it a lot more. And the village guys all stepped up at a level to clean the place, keep the property mowed and trimmed, and even that wall that everybody supported to purchase, the restoration and opening of that wall, I think played a huge role. And none of that stuff would never been able to happen unless this board right here and you guys supporting that mission for that property. So thanks, guys, for that. So I appreciate that. So
on that wall, can I just ask a quick question? The gates that face the Caesar bust, I know they don't belong to us. But anyway, talking him into restoring those two gates, because everybody thinks it just flows with all the other gates that look great. And the fence. Yeah. I don't know, it's just a thought, maybe. Just
okay. can try to reach out to him and see what we can do there, so, all right, good. Okay, anyone from the public? Chief, do you have anything you want to say here? All right. Other than season's over, so not yet, exactly. So, I mean, just big things that are coming up. Saturday's the fire department muster. 2 weeks after that is Septemberfest. The week after that, Hampton's Marathon. A week after that is the film festival. And so there's a lot of things that are going on around here that are all good things that are going to drive people to the village of Southampton to support local merchants and local retail and stuff. So, great. Okay, so we have no executive session tonight, so I'd like to make a motion to close this public session.
Second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.